Chapter 2281. This question was a test for Jiang Qimeng. She pondered for a while, only to hear Song Enya's nagging. Mu Yanqing will definitely find it ridiculous and think that I'm shameless. Besides, didn't you say that the Mu family is arranging a marriage for him? I heard that Uncle Mu has set his eyes on the Lin family's third daughter, Lin Shuya. If I take the initiative to look for him, won't I just be throwing myself at him? After a pause, she continued reluctantly, besides, if I say that I'm pregnant with his child, it's another matter whether he'll believe me or not. He hasn't even touched me before. If his child appeared out of nowhere in my stomach, he'll definitely think that I'm ridiculous. I don't want that to happen. She took a deep breath and smiled bitterly. Besides, I've already done 2 paternity tests. If I do a third time, I'm afraid that I won't be able to keep the child. Mom, it wasn't easy to get this child, I don't want to take the risk. If I lose this child, who knows how much suffering the next one will have to go through. Mom, what should I do? I'll think of another way. Jiang Qimeng frowned and comforted her as she fell into deep thought. Just as Song Enya was hesitating, she heard a hint of excitement appear on her mother's face. You said that you've never interacted with him before. Yes. Then, can't we just create an opportunity for intimate contact? Jiang Qimeng said matter-of-factly. Huh? Song Enya could not figure out what her mother was thinking. Jiang Qimeng said, I heard that Mu Yanqing is a well-behaved man on the surface, but he has played with many women outside. He should be frequenting places like nightclubs and bars. When this matter with Yunxi is over, I'll find an opportunity to make some arrangements, and this matter will naturally come to fruition. Jiang Qimeng did not seem to realize how despicable her method was. Song Enya was also bewitched by her words and asked, What's the plan? You'll know when the time comes. Can't you say it now? She was a little unhappy. Mom, if you want me to cooperate, why don't you say it now? It's good to let me be mentally prepared. Don't be caught off guard when the time comes. I've already told you. Don't feel awkward and refuse to cooperate when the time comes. Jiang Qimeng paused for a moment before she told him the idea she had in mind. So that was what she was thinking. Doesn't Mu Yanqing frequent nightclubs? When the time came, she would arrange for some people to deliberately get him drunk or spike his drink with ecstasy. Then, they would bring him to the hotel and let him share a room with her. Then, he would do some tricks. When he woke up at dawn and saw Song Enya sharing a bed with him, he would naturally suspect that he had slept with her because he was drunk last night. Wouldn't that give him a good reason to do so? In that case, the child would naturally have a solid foundation. When the time came, he would naturally be able to negotiate with Mu Yanqing with his conditions. Given the Song family's status and background, as long as they were willing to negotiate terms with him, Mu Yanqing would eventually agree. Song Enya's face flushed red when she heard this. She felt that what Jiang Qimeng did was no different from selling her out. But now that things had developed to this point, she couldn't afford to hesitate any longer. Chapter 2282. Song Enya nodded hesitantly and muttered, I got it. You can make the arrangements when the time comes. Anyway, just tell me what to do and I'll cooperate. Enya, that's a good girl. Jiang Qimeng was satisfied with her understanding. What about Lin Shuya, then? Song Enya suddenly raised her doubts. The Lins and the Songs are of similar status. Most importantly, the Lins are also a prestigious family with a strong background. Mu Yanqing will definitely lean toward them. When the time comes, what if he insists on having Lin Shuya and not me? You're already pregnant with his child. When the time comes, he won't be able to make excuses. Jiang Qimeng did not care. She had interacted with Lin Shuya a few times. She was proud and arrogant and would not take Mu Yanqing seriously. Mu Yanqing would only be bullied by her. When the time came, she would gather some evidence and find something against Lin Shuya to throw in front of Mu Linfeng. When the time came, she would have the capital to negotiate. Moreover, they were already pregnant. The Mu family valued heirs the most. A mother's status would rise because of her son. This trick was tried and tested. With Mu Yanqing's child, she would have full confidence. At the thought of this, Jiang Qimeng patted her shoulder reassuringly and said, "You don't have to worry about the rest. Do as I say, I definitely won't harm you. You just have to think about how to be an elegant young mistress of the Mu family. From today onwards, you can't be as spoiled as before. Stay at home and learn some red tape. These will come in handy when you enter the Mu family. Since you've already made up your mind, it's time for you to focus." Although the plan had not been implemented yet, Jiang Qimeng had already taught her how to be a young mistress of the Mu family. Song Enya nodded and clenched the corner of her shirt. She pursed her lips, but her thoughts were complicated. Her heart for Mu Yaja was already dead. All that was left was hatred and hatred for him. Since she had set her goal, she could only continue to pursue it without hesitation. As for the old and new grudges, she would settle them all once she stepped into the Mu family's door. At the thought of this, the corners of her lips curled up into a cold and eerie smile. It was a fulfilling and happy new year until the 15th day of the first lunar month. Yun Shishir's days were peaceful and comfortable. Without the hassle of work, this new year was incomparably comfortable. On the second day of the new year, she and Mu Yaja brought along the two Xiaobao girls and went to the Maldives for a holiday. It wasn't until the moment she boarded the plane that she found out that a certain meticulous man had already planned this vacation. The plane tickets and hotel were all booked a month in advance. New Year was the peak season for tourism in the Maldives. Many of the hotels were overcrowded, and the demand could not meet the demand. For this reason, Mu Yaja booked a 5-star hotel and first-class tickets a month in advance, taking the lead in seizing the golden resources of the holiday. But he had never mentioned it to her. On the morning of the second day of the new year, he woke her up with a morning exercise that was good for her physical and mental health. In the aftertaste of their lovemaking, he whispered in her ear, "Pack your luggage right away. We're going on a vacation." Yun Shishir was surprised. "Where are we going?" The man smiled mysteriously and slightly curled his lips. "The Maldives." "The Maldives. Oh, God." Chapter 2283. The blue sky, the endless sea, the clear water, and even the hotel under the sea, every time she thought of these, she felt a surge of emotions. She had always wanted to go to the Maldives, but she had never had the time. More importantly, she had gone abroad once, and it was especially troublesome. Hence, she had only had beautiful fantasies about the Maldives and had never had the chance to go. She had not expected this man to give her such a surprise. But how would she know? Mu Yaja knew that she had always dreamed of going to the Maldives because he had flipped through her diary. He was fulfilling all the wishes she had written down. The Maldives was just one of her dreams. However, on the plane, Mu Yaja glanced at Gong Jie, who was sitting beside Yu Yu and leisurely flipping through financial magazines. He was in a bad mood. "Why is he following us?" Yun Shishir said awkwardly. Well, Gong Jie seemed to have heard Mu Yaja's unhappy question. He smiled and said, "It's not a honeymoon. Why can't I tag along?" Yu Yu looked up and glanced at the unhappy man. Then, she looked at Gong Jie, who was smiling wickedly. She raised her eyebrows. Xiao Yichen said quietly, "Uncle, Daddy is disdaining you for shamelessly tagging along to be a third wheel." Third wheel? Gong Jie did not take it to heart. He pinched his cheeks and snorted coldly. "If I'm a third wheel, aren't the two of you spoiling the fun too? Why can the two of you tag along but I can't?" Xiao Yichen smiled and said, "Because we are Mommy's little tails. Mommy won't be able to shake us off no matter what." Yu Yu asked curiously, "Then what's uncle?" Xiao Yichen smiled and said, "I'm the head of the third wheel." Gong Jie was speechless. Head of the third wheel? What kind of stupid term was that? Yun Shishir was so amused that her stomach hurt from holding back her laughter. Gong Jie gave her a bitter look. "Sis," she was still smiling. Yun Shishir forced herself to hold back and smiled. Shao Jia, since you're here, I'll leave these two kids to you. What? Shao Yichen giggled and couldn't help but say, Uncle has changed from a third wheel to a nanny. Get lost. Gong Jia proudly turned his face away and expressed his stance. I'm here for a vacation, not to be a nanny. Wherever big sister goes, I will go too. Mu Yaja's face darkened. What a killjoy. He didn't know what kind of method this kid had used. She clearly didn't book his ticket, but he was actually able to board the plane in such a grand manner. Gong Jia, however, laughed. What a joke. This airline company was controlled by Hurricane Group. Hurricane Group started out as a smuggler. As their territory expanded, they gradually expanded into sea transportation, air transportation, and land transportation. Out of the top 10 airlines in the world, Hurricane Group controlled 5 of them. As the crown prince of Hurricane Group, it was easy for him to book a plane. He was still keeping a low profile. If he had asked to book a plane, the passengers on the plane, including that annoying brother-in-law of his, would have been chased off the plane and obediently waited at the airport for the next flight. He was being merciful. Book a plane ticket? What a joke. Chapter 2284. Yu Yu thought to himself, Daddy will surely feel aggrieved if he finds out about this, but there's nothing I can do about it. Who asked him to choose this airline? Who asked the private airline under his name to be temporarily frozen because of the Mu Group? He was lucky that his passport was not frozen. However, even if his uncle kicked his dear and adorable father off the plane, he would still carry his father up again. The Maldives Islands, the necklace that God had sprinkled on earth, was the last paradise in the Indian Ocean. The Republic of Maldives was located in South Asia. It was an island country consisting of more than 1,200 small coral islands, 202 of which were inhabited. Since there was a rainy season from May to September, it was the best season to travel from October to April. Before the registration, Gong Jia suggested that they go to the Huvafan Fusher Hotel. Hence, Mu Yaja changed the hotel at the last minute and upgraded it to a 7-star hotel. Alas, Mu Yaja's face, which had just relaxed a little, darkened at the sight of his nephew. Was he a dogskin plaster? I will go wherever my sister goes. She was on his bed. Did this guy want to sleep with her too? Yu Yu glanced at Mu Yaja's expression and knew that Daddy was unhappy. Hence, he tugged at Gong Jia's sleeve and said in a low voice, Uncle, you can't ruin Daddy and Mommy's trip this time. You can't ruin it. Ruin it? Ruin it? Gong Jia snorted and said arrogantly, I don't have time for that. Then why are you sticking to me? Yu Yu asked cautiously. Don't tell me you're going to hunt for girls. Gong Jia bit his straw and curled his lips coldly. Boring. Uncle, how many days of annual leave did the Hurricane Group give you? Why do you look like you have nothing to do? The annual performance target has been reached. I have half a month of annual leave this year. Oh, Yu Yu suddenly took the drink from his hand and took a sip. She warned, anyway, you'd better behave during this trip and not cause any trouble. It's rare for Mommy to go on a trip. Don't disturb her mood. Woo. Gong Jia narrowed his eyes pitifully and complained, you're biased. How am I biased? Gong Jia felt wronged. I'm your uncle. I love you so much, but you're protecting your daddy. He paused and spread his hands. I gave you that island for free. Give it back. Yu Yu said in disdain, how can you take back what you've given away? Shameless. You have no conscience. The gifts you gave me were all one-sided. I didn't force you or blackmail you. There's no reason to take it back. Shao Yichen also persuaded him patiently, that's right, uncle. Men should be gentlemanly. Gong Jia was speechless, however, under the pressure of Yu Yu and Shao Yichen, Gong Jia finally promised that he wouldn't cause any trouble during this trip. The 5 of them were divided into 2 groups and were free to move around. Mu Yaja and Yun Shishir went to the Lotus Flower Powder Island. Gong Jia and Little Li Chen, on the other hand, went to another island. When they were about to get off the plane, Yu suddenly thought of something and asked curiously, "Uncle, aren't you bringing bodyguards with you on this trip?" "No need." "Why?" Chapter 2285. "That's because I have Xiao Chen." "No way." Yu pulled Xiao Chen into his camp and emphasized, "Xiao Chen is my personal bodyguard." "Uncle, don't covet him." "I'm not afraid." Gong Jia said proudly, "I bought the island we're going to 2 years ago. All the facilities on the island, including the hotel, bar, and resort, are under my name." Yu did not listen to him, though. Instead, he turned to Little Li Chen and reminded him, "Remember this, Uncle is a super dangerous person. The number of people who want to assassinate him can line up from here to Paris. If anything happens, you take me with you and run. If necessary, keep a distance from him so that you don't get caught up in it." Little Li Chen nodded solemnly at his father's serious explanation. Gong Jia frowned when he heard this. He grabbed Yu's ear and complained, "Why are you so heartless?" Yu sneered, "I'm telling the truth." What he said was not false at all. Hurricane Group was the world's largest arms group and was known as the Empire of Terror. Gong Jia, as the chief commander of the North American and European markets, was known as the Merchant of Death. He owned more than 100 cargo planes and more than 50 supercargo ships. He controlled more than 1,200 shipping routes around the world and was fluent in 6 languages. He could be said to be the most important person in Hurricane Group. Danger was always lurking around him. Not only that, but he was also blacklisted by many governments. He even made it to the top 10 of the FBI's wanted list. In that case, he was indeed a terrorist. Some time ago, he had offended many leaders of terrorist organizations in order to expand his territory and get a share of the pie. He was in charge of the European and North American markets, but he had extended his ambition to the African market. In the past 3 years, Gong Jia had made use of the intelligence agency's resources and operations to reach a transaction agreement. He had almost monopolized the majority of the market's profits from 32 battles of various sizes in 29 African countries and earned countless profits. The profits were enough to make many people jealous. Last year, he had hundreds of billions of dollars worth of orders under his name and became the leader of Hurricane Group. Of course, it was enough to make people jealous. Gong Xiaoying was dissatisfied. Every market had its own person in charge. The African market had always been under someone else's charge. Gong Jia was breaking the rules by meddling in other markets. Gong Jia said coldly, "The African market is the most fertile market, but it has been unable to meet the target for many years. Hurricane Group doesn't need such a useless person in charge. I am doing this because I want to prove that the African market has the highest potential." Gong Xiaoying was left speechless by her words. In his eyes, his son was extraordinary. There were not many people who could gain his approval, but Gong Jia was definitely one of them. However, although Gong Xiaoying did not approve of his actions, he also recognized his talent. Therefore, for a long time after that, Gong Xiaoying sent 5 more mercenary groups to protect him. But in fact, Gong Jia had offended more than that. From the European governments to the terrorist organizations, there were too many organizations that had put him on the wanted list. No wonder Yu described him as a dangerous person. Chapter 2286. The group arrived at the island. On the other side, Yun Shishir and Mu Yaja had also settled down at the hotel. After checking in, she entered the room. Initially, she was still a little worried about the 2 little guys. They were unfamiliar with the place, so it was inevitable that she would be worried. Although she had gotten rid of the 3 huge light bulbs, there was only the 2 of them left, and she felt empty around them. Perhaps it was because they were not used to being alone for a while. However, after a short psychological battle, Yun Shishir thought that although the 2 little guys were a little mischievous, there should be nothing to worry about with Gong Jia around. The hotel they booked was a water house. As the name suggested, it was a hotel where there was seawater outside. The hotel Muyaja booked was a super luxurious 7-star hotel. It had more than 300 square meters of space, a living room, a garden, a balcony, and so on. Everything was available. What was even more shocking was that in such a hotel, when one pushed open the balcony door, there was a long wooden corridor. At the end, there was an escalator that led straight to the seawater. Sitting on the escalator, stepping on the seawater and basking in the sun, was definitely an incomparably comfortable experience. This was going to be a perfect island vacation. She was looking forward to it. There were no tourist attractions on the island, nor were there any bustling tourists. In their free time, they could step on the fine white sand or go into the seawater to swim with the fish. When they were tired, they could go to a spa to relax. When they were hungry, they could sit on the balcony and enjoy a seafood feast while facing the sea breeze. When she woke up in the morning, the first thing she saw was the person she loved the most. The second thing she saw was the endless blue sea outside the window. This was probably her most beautiful fantasy about the Maldives. However, this vacation would probably cost a lot of money. If it were in the past, Yun Shishir would definitely not be worried about such a huge expenditure. However, this man had just stepped down from his position as the head of the family. She vaguely heard that after handing over the power of the Mu Corporation, the accounts were tight. She did not know if this vacation would cost a lot of money. With such concerns, she took advantage of the fact that there were only the two of them and pulled him aside to ask, "This vacation in the Maldives should cost a lot, right?" Muyaja turned around and glanced at her. He smirked and said, "You don't have to worry about that. You just have to think about how to enjoy your vacation. That's enough." "Why not?" Yun Shishir smiled disapprovingly. "We're already husband and wife. We shouldn't hide anything from each other. Actually, my dream holiday destination is the Maldives. I didn't expect you to have already arranged this holiday for me. But I heard that you've been tight on money recently. I heard from Jean Yu that you've invested some assets outside. After leaving the Mu Group, you still have some businesses under your name. If you want to operate these businesses, you'll definitely need a huge capital chain. But since you've severed all ties with Mu Group, your finances must be tight. I'm just worried, don't let these meaningless expenses drag you down." "What do you mean by meaningless expenses?" Muyaja smiled helplessly and turned around to hug her gently. He kissed her on the forehead and said, "After we got married, other than the engagement ceremony, it seems like we haven't spent time together for a long time." When the man said this, Yun Shishir immediately blushed. She lowered her eyes and softly said, Chapter 2287. Despite what he said, she could not help but worry. "But we have so much time together in the future. We can enjoy our vacation anytime, not at this critical juncture. How can I enjoy it in peace if it affects your development?" Muyaja could not help but laugh. This was probably why this little woman was both adorable and hateful. She was always thinking of him. Perhaps it was because she had been living a hard life for too long. She had always been diligent and thrifty, so it was inevitable that she felt that going on a luxurious trip would be extravagant and wasteful. But in reality, she did not have to worry about this at all. You don't have to worry about the expenses of this trip at all. As for what you're worried about, the truth is that there were some problems with the capital chain some time ago, but it's all under my control. I've already calculated that leaving the Muse will bring about a series of difficulties, but I've already expected it, so I've made arrangements in advance. Song Enyo was one of the most important links. Song Zhenghua had already agreed to allocate the land in Xianqing to him. In less than 2 days, the signing ceremony would be held. With this piece of land, coupled with a new round of financing after the 15th day of the first lunar month, the capital chain should recover. Yun Shishir probably did not expect that this man had already planned everything ahead of time, so it was inevitable that she had many doubts. Yun Shishir kissed him and rebuked, "I'm just worried." He smiled. "I know. But since we're here, let's just enjoy it without any distractions. There's no point in worrying about anything else." It's better to enjoy this vacation wholeheartedly. Alright. I got it. Mu Yaja suddenly hugged her. Oh, right. There's one more thing. Yun Shishir looked at him curiously. What is it? Mu Yaja gently pecked her pink lips and smiled. Shishir, let's get married. Shishir, let's get married. Because of this sudden surprise, Yun Shishir could not help but widen her eyes in disbelief. Get married? In her imagination, there was still a long way to go before an official wedding. The man promised her that he would arrange the wedding as soon as possible. However, she imagined that with so many things happening recently, the wedding couldn't be planned in a hurry. However, she was not in a hurry, but the man was. He couldn't wait to see his beloved woman in a wedding dress, appearing gracefully in front of him. Therefore, things that were originally planned for a long time were put on the agenda. Yes. After we're done with this, we'll start preparing for the wedding. However, Yun Shishir was worried. Isn't it a little too rushed? I promised you that I would give you a wedding that would attract the attention of the entire world. Since I said so, I naturally have to keep my promise. However, since we want to make it grand, we have to prepare in advance so that we won't be flustered when the time comes. Mu Yaja paused, muttered to himself for a moment, and then said, there's no need to consider the matrimonial house. Yun Shanshir Yi's manor will be our matrimonial house. Speaking of which, originally, Mu Yaja had planned to recover the assets of Xiangdi Wok after he left the Mu family. After all, these assets belonged to the Mu family. Since Mu Yaja had left the Mu family, he had nothing to do with them anymore. Chapter 2288. In addition, Yun Shanshir Yi's assets had long been under Jiang Yishan's name by Mu Sheng. This property already belonged to Mu Yaja, so Mu Linfeng had no right to tamper with it. Mu Yaja had long been wary of this. Hence, before this, he had already privately changed the ownership of many properties. Now that he had left the Mu family, he looked down and out on the surface, but in reality, Mu Linfeng was secretly stomping his feet in anger. With Mu Yaja's departure, many of the Mu family's assets had been divided. Not only was the Mu group greatly damaged, but it was also helpless. Since the bridal chamber was already settled, the rest of the matters would be much smoother. How do we prepare for the wedding? Yun Shishir was a little lost. This was her first time preparing for a wedding, so it was inevitable that her mind would go blank. She did not know what else to prepare. Mu Yaja said in annoyance, little fool, there are many things to prepare for a wedding. For example, the wedding dress you'll wear during the wedding needs to be specially custom-made. Aside from the decorations, before that, we have to prepare for the wedding photos. Ah! Wedding photos. At the mention of wedding photos, Yun Shishir's eyes lit up at his reminder. Mu Yaja could not help but laugh. Why? Do you have any thoughts about wedding photos? Yun Shishir pursed her lips and smiled with her eyes narrowed. I do have some thoughts, heh. Where do you want to go for the photos? If I knew that this trip would be in the Maldives, it wouldn't be a bad idea to take wedding photos here. Yun Shishir rebuked, why didn't you remind me earlier? Other than the Maldives, there are many other options for wedding photos. For example, Mu Yaja said, Paris, France. I heard that it's very romantic to take wedding photos there. I knew it. Fontainebleau Palace in France is one of the biggest palaces in France. We can go there for the photos. Oh, seeing that Yun Shishir was deep in thought, Mu Yaja asked, what other suggestions do you have? I used to fantasize about going to Prague to take wedding photos. It's very romantic there. There's a melancholy mystery there, with Romanesque and Gothic architecture, and many medieval-style buildings. Okay. Actually, Yun Shishir suddenly, she said, actually, we can take photos anywhere. It's important to look good. If it's a famous photographer, it will be beautiful no matter where it's taken. Don't worry about that. I've already made an appointment with a photographer. We just need to decide on the location. Mankey Smith. one of the world's top masters. He's photographers. Manki the royal family's royal family, Manki's royal family's wedding previously, when the Mu family, SA family photo families Mu's Aziz's family's Yun Shishir did not know that the photographer whom the man had hired was the best in the world. If she were to find out, she would probably be in for quite a shock. It was said that Manki's pay was calculated on an hourly basis. $10,000 per hour. And this was the price that Mu Yaja bargained with him. If Yun Shishir knew that Mu Yaja had learned how to bargain, she would probably be overjoyed. Mu Yaja said, "It's okay. Think about where you want to take the photos. Wedding photos are a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Of course, you have to make the most of it. Ha ha ha. If you let me do as I please, you might just declare bankruptcy after the wedding photos." Chapter 2289. You said it yourself. Don't regret it when the time comes. Aha. Just as the two of them were enjoying their vacation in the Maldives, the contract signing ceremony for Xian Cheng's land was carried out as scheduled. At the city government building, Jiang Shen and Lu Jinyu were in charge of this matter. Due to Song Zhengguo's health, he did not appear in person and left it to someone else. In just an hour, the contract signing ceremony was successfully completed. Xingyu Financial Group successfully obtained the development rights of Xian Cheng's land at a price of a few million yuan. Song Zhengguo was probably regretting it so much that his intestines were turning green. If not for this accident, this piece of land would not have been a problem at the auction for more than 1 billion yuan. A few million yuan was the price of a cabbage. No wonder Song Zhengguo claimed to be ill. If he were to see Xian Cheng's land fall into Mu Yaja's hands with his own eyes, he would be so angry that he would faint. On the other hand, when the Mu group received this news, they were completely unaware that it was Mu Yaja's doing. After the Lantern Festival, the announcement of Mu Yaja's resignation as CEO was about to be announced. The Mu group was already in a mess, especially Mu Linfeng. Even during the new year, he was extremely busy. For the first time during the new year, everyone in the Mu group worked overtime without any holidays. The company was filled with complaints. On the other hand, the Lin family also replied that they would arrange for the two children to meet during the new year to get to know each other. When Mu Linfeng received the news, he immediately made the arrangements. Mu Yanqing was even more on guard. Mu Linfeng repeatedly requested that this meeting was a rare opportunity and that they must seize it well. Naturally, Mu Yanqing repeatedly promised that he would not let this rare opportunity go to waste. On the other hand, Lin Buxiong had also persuaded Lin Shuya. Perhaps because she was disappointed in Hua Jin, coupled with Lin Buxiong's harsh words, Lin Shuya knew that it was impossible between her and Hua Jin. After locking herself in her room for a day and a night, she seemed to have completely thought it through and agreed to this matter. In any case, it did not matter who she married if it was not Hua Jin. Lin Shuya felt like a walking corpse. Whatever Lin Buxiong told her to do, she would do it without any hesitation. Lin Buxiong was deeply satisfied. That night, Mu Yanqing dressed up especially grandly. The meeting was arranged to take place at the Mu Group's hotel, and he went there early. Lin Shuya requested again and again that only the two of them were needed for this meeting. She did not need anyone else to accompany her. Hence, Mu Linfeng did not go. Although Lin Buxiong was worried that something might go wrong if she went alone, he was also worried that if he insisted on accompanying her, it would arouse her rebellious heart. Therefore, he gave up on accompanying her. Both of them were young. If there were no elders present, they would not be so restrained. Perhaps the two of them would be satisfied with each other after talking to each other. Perhaps they would fall in love with each other. Lin Shuya arrived at 7:00 in the evening as promised. When she pushed open the door to the private room, she saw Mu Yanqing sitting on the sofa in a well-ironed suit. When he saw her, he immediately stood up with a flushed face and gracefully walked up to her. Standing in front of her, he gave her a gentlemanly bow and extended his hand. "Hello, Miss Lin. I'm Mu Yanqing. Please forgive me for my lack of hospitality." Chapter 2290. Mu Yanqing's heart sank. Lin Shuya said nonchalantly, although this is the first time we're meeting, there's no need for all these formalities. There's no need to put on a show for anyone. With that, she arrogantly bypassed him and walked toward the sofa. Her neglect caused the polite smile on Mu Yanqing's face to inevitably freeze in awkwardness. He retracted his hand somewhat uneasily. It was said that Lin Shuya, the third daughter of the Lin family, had a rebellious temperament. Now that he had seen it with his own eyes, it seemed that she was indeed difficult to tame. However, her reaction had also stimulated his primitive desire to conquer. He smiled and sat down on the sofa, facing her. Faced with the aloof Lin Shuya, Mu Yanqing excitedly made a brief exchange of pleasantries. However, even though he prided himself on being witty and humorous, Lin Shuya's face remained cold and expressionless from beginning to end. Mu Yanqing was depressed. This woman was much more difficult to deal with than he had expected. She did not respond, and the atmosphere fell into an awkward one. She did not speak, and even though Mu Yanqing was full of enthusiasm, he did not know how to continue the conversation. He could not help but furrow his brows. The scene was still and the atmosphere was so tense that even he, a hunter of love, felt uneasy and helpless. Lin Shuya suddenly laughed. Mu Yanqing, do you really take this meeting seriously? I thought that you were just like me and were just going through the motions. How is that possible? Despite his displeasure, Mu Yanqing maintained a polite smile on his face. Miss Shuya, I take this meeting very seriously. After all, this is the beginning of our relationship, and I sincerely hope that we can have a good start. Oh. How patient. Lin Shuya said indifferently, still, it's not surprising. After all, for the sake of the family head position, it's important to choose a strong marriage partner. Mu Yanqing's face froze for a moment. Isn't that so? Lin Shuya mocked, to put it bluntly, both families have their own selfish motives for this marriage alliance. Your second uncle arranged this marriage in hopes of helping you become the family head. You, on the other hand, are a disappointment. Born of a concubine, you're lowly. If you want to become the family head, you naturally have to increase your bargaining chip. Her bluntness inevitably made it hard for others to get out of the awkward situation. Mu Yanqing flew into a rage out of humiliation at first. He almost lost his cool, but after calming himself down, he smiled instead. Miss Lin is a straightforward person. He immediately relaxed his posture and was too lazy to put on an act in front of her. What about you? Since you know the reason why my second uncle arranged this meeting, why are you still willing to come? Because, in any case, it's not up to you to decide on your marriage. So, what's the point of being so calculative? Lin Shuya paused and smiled coldly. However, if I'm willing to marry you, I hope you won't mind. What? After we get married, I won't ask about your private life, and you won't interfere with my private life. You can have a woman outside, you can mess around, I won't interfere. But at the same time, I have a man, and you are not allowed to interfere. What do you think? Mu Yanqing's face darkened instantly. Are you negotiating with me? Even if you want to negotiate, you need to have the capital to do so. Chapter 2291. Ha! Mu Yanqing's face remained impassive, but he sneered inwardly. This Lin Shuya. She was more interesting than he had imagined. She actually said such shocking words. Not only did she allow him to have a mistress outside, but he thought that she was a magnanimous woman when he heard half of her words. He did not expect her to follow up with a warning that he was not to interfere if she had a man outside. She was openly accusing him of being a cuckold. She was willing to meet him, so he thought that she was sincere in wanting to get to know him better. He did not expect her to deliberately disgust him. Not too much. Was it not too much to say that he had a green thumb above his head? He could tell that she did not like him. She even hated him to the core. Both of them had rebellious personalities, especially Lin Shuya, who was even more rebellious. So, was she trying to force him to retreat with such disgusting words? Did she think that he would give up and shrink back just because she said that? Dream on. Mu Yanqing was ambitious, but at the same time, he knew very well what he wanted. Lin Shuya could not help bursting into laughter when she saw him trying to suppress his anger while pretending to be magnanimous. Don't tell me you think that it's only right and proper for you to have a fling outside while I'm despicable and filthy for having a string of relationships outside? I don't like double standards. Mu Yanqing smiled. What makes you think that I won't behave myself and indulge in extramarital affairs after we get married? Lin Shuya smiled. Learn from the mistakes of others. Mu Yazhe was stunned. What do you mean? Lin Shuya said, I've seen many such marriages, so I have such thoughts. Not to mention others, even her parents had the same type of marriage. Her father had a few young and beautiful women outside, and 2 of them were even students from prestigious universities. Her mother, on the other hand, was equally unruly. On the surface, she appeared to be well educated, but deep down, she was unwilling to be left out. She had grown up in such an environment, so she did not have any expectations for such a marriage. It was not that she had never fantasized about staying by one person's side for the rest of her life and growing old together, but now, such an ideal marriage seemed as distant as a fairy tale. Besides, if it was not Hua Jin, it did not matter who the man was. Life is short. In a life without love, it was not fun to play with anyone. It was just a marriage in name, so there was no need to take it seriously. Lin Shuya paused for a moment and smiled. Besides, don't you have many women outside now? He heard that one of them was called Meng Qingxue. You haven't broken up with that woman yet, have you? Mu Yanqing's lips twitched slightly. It seemed that this woman had come prepared. On the surface, he seemed to be calm and collected, but before he came here, he probably already knew about Zhang Xian's background. He said coldly, she's just a dispensable woman. Before we get married, I'll cut off all ties with her. After marriage, you will be my only woman. Ha! Don't joke around. Lin Shuya sneered, once this marriage is connected, it will only be in name. Even if you stick to me, I won't cling to you. After all, no one can force me to share a bed with a man I don't like, or even hate. Chapter 2292. Mu Yanqing nearly flew into a rage out of humiliation. Suppressing his anger, he said unhurriedly, I heard that Miss Lin studied abroad for a few years during your university days. It seems that your mindset has become the same as those foreigners. This is the first time I've seen such a shocking mindset. Lin Shuya continued, to put it bluntly, I can marry you and give you a status, but you can forget about the rest. Mu Yanqing glared at her angrily and slowly clenched his fists so tightly that his knuckles cracked. That D***MN Lin Shuya. This was the first time they met, and he had already humiliated him so much. Is this condition very difficult to accept? Lin Shuya seemed to be deliberately provoking him as her words became sharper. Mu Yanqing, marrying you is the wish of the elders. However, if you want to touch me, you'll have to see if I'm willing or not. The key is. She sized him up casually, her red lips parting as she spat out contemptuously, are you fit or not? Lin Shuya. Mu Yanqing was finally completely enraged. He stood up abruptly, pointed at her, and complained angrily, you're too much. How noble do you think you are? On the surface, you look educated and reasonable, but I didn't expect you to be so frivolous and despicable. Then, don't marry me. Lin Shuya shrugged innocently and said playfully, I'm not forcing you to marry me. I'm just saying this up front. If you're willing, we'll get engaged. If you can't accept it, then leave. Mu Yanqing sneered without thinking, Lin Shuya, who do you think you are? Do you think that I have to marry you, that it has to be you? Don't think too highly of yourself. I'm the daughter of a military family and the third daughter of the Lin family. Just based on these halos, it's enough for me to think too highly of myself. Lin Shuya paused and pursed her red lips slightly. Suddenly, she took out a cigarette box and smoked a cigarette. Her every movement had the unrestrained temperament of a woman from the secular world. She took out a lighter and lit the cigarette with ease. She took a puff and exhaled slowly, revealing her white teeth. Her smile was charming, but it seemed to be some kind of deliberate provocation. If the man sitting in front of me this time was Mu Yaja, perhaps I would be willing to suck up to him. But you, no matter how you look at it, you can't compare to your brother. In terms of ability, you can't compare to him. In terms of talent, you can't compare to him. Although his face looked like that of a human, it was still far from that of a real human. Mu Yancheng, who do you think you are? He told me not to be too self-righteous. What about you? Don't flatter yourself too much. If you want to put on an act, then don't. That would make you seem even more hypocritical, hee. Boom. Mu Yancheng's head was about to explode from her words. Comparing him to Mu Yaja was probably the greatest humiliation to him. When he was very young, he was always compared to Mu Yaja. When he was young, he was initially in awe of and worshipped Mu Yaja. As a child, it was only natural for him to worship powerful figures, just like how one would look up to a hero. To him, Mu Yaja had always been a mythical figure that he could only look up to but not reach. Chapter 2293. Why was he always being compared to Mu Yaja? Why was he inferior to him in every aspect? Hence, this had become his most untouchable reverse scale. This was undoubtedly the biggest insult to him. A man's ego was terrifyingly strong, especially for someone like Mu Yancheng, who could not tolerate such humiliation. Looking sullen, he kicked the short table away, causing the tea on the table to spill out instantly. Lin Shuya took a puff of her cigarette without batting an eyelid. She did not take his humiliating behavior to heart and merely sat on the sofa in an elegant and undisciplined manner. Her undisciplined attitude only served to accentuate his wretched state, though. Mu Yancheng stood upright and suddenly flashed a sinister grin. Under the dim lighting, his grin looked a little wolfish. He suddenly walked up to her slowly, bent down, and lowered his head to look at her condescendingly. Lin Shuya, you probably don't know what kind of person I am. Lin Shuya raised her head to look at him, seemingly unmoved. She only heard him say word by word, I'm an unscrupulous man. I won't give up until I reach my goal. Do you think that you can easily defeat me by humiliating me like this? Lin Shuya, you're still too inexperienced. Ha! Lin Shuya sneered. I'm just speaking the truth. If you don't care, it's not bad to marry you. At the very least, I can live a carefree life and no longer have to be controlled. The muscles on Mu Yancheng's face twitched again. He then snorted and said, it was a pleasant meeting. With that, he turned around and left without looking back. He thought to himself, one day, I'll tame this woman who doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth and make her obedient. The door slammed shut with a loud bang. Lin Shuya finally could not take it anymore. She swung her hand and threw the cigarette on the carpet. The sparks from the cigarette burned the carpet. She was so angry that she stomped on it with her high heels. As she stomped on the carpet, she covered her mouth in pain and coughed violently. How could she smoke? Everything was nothing but an act. It was all for the sake of showing her unrestrained side in front of this man. She was so silly. She thought that by putting on such a frivolous face, she would be able to scare this man away. She pretended to buy a pack of women's cigarettes and even learned how to smoke seriously. Just now, when she was facing this man, everything was pretentious, but once he left. As soon as she let down her guard, she choked on a mouthful of smoke. She threw away the cigarette butt, held on to the armrest of the sofa, and coughed violently. As she coughed, she smiled sadly. Heh. He. Lin Shuya rubbed the corner of her eyes and sneered, they're all bastards. He. In the end, he laughed so hard that tears came out of his eyes. Lin Shuya finally stopped coughing. She closed her eyes, but she couldn't stop her tears from flowing down. Once those masks of disguise were removed, even he himself would fiercely hate himself. She thought that she had humiliated that man with her words, but in the end, wasn't she the one who had been humiliated the most? Lin Shuya endured the pain and stood up from the sofa. She picked up her handbag and staggered towards the door. Chapter 2294. She was too naive. But what could she do? How could she live in such a cowardly manner? Even fiercely loving the man she loved had become an extravagant hope. Growing up in such a family, she had been doted on ever since she was born. Aristocratic families all had their own social circles. She had many close friends who were also of noble birth around her. Even so, she was still the one who attracted the most attention. Many people envied her. But how could she not envy those girls of ordinary birth? At least, they had the right to choose their own marriage, didn't they? Equal in social status, what the f*ck about matching in terms of social status? Why did love have to be built on such an unequal agreement? She looked at the sincere and earnest faces in her family, saying, Shuya, we're doing this for your own good. For your own good. With your status, you naturally have to choose a marriage partner who is worthy of you. Your marriage is not a private matter. This concerns the reputation of our family. It's an important matter for our family. It's not up to you to decide. Those trivial voices kept echoing in her ears. Lin Shuya walked to the door and couldn't stand anymore. Her legs turned to jelly, and she sat on the floor. She was the only one left in the huge private room. In such a situation, she couldn't control herself anymore. She covered her face and wailed wantonly. Sob, sob, sob. She really didn't want such a marriage. It was in name only. On the surface, they treated each other with respect, but in the end? She just wanted to be free to like a man, and not be forced to accept such a marriage arrangement. She didn't want anyone. Except for Hua Jin, she didn't want anyone else. But, it was so difficult. Lin Shuya hugged her knees and curled up in a corner, crying bitterly. A waiter passing by outside heard the unusual commotion inside the room. Out of curiosity, he pushed the door open and walked in. However, when he heard crying coming from the door, he was shocked and went around to take a look. He saw an exquisitely dressed woman curled up in a corner, covering her mouth in pain and crying non-stop. He immediately squatted down and tried to help her up. Lin Shuya pushed him away violently. Don't touch me. Sob, 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 go away, all of you go away. Don't touch me. Madam, what's wrong? Are you hurt anywhere? Get lost, Lin Shuya sobbed. Don't I even have the right to cry? The waiter was embarrassed and stood there, but he was at a loss. He could only call the manager to solve this matter. Of course, this was all in the future. After leaving the hotel, Mu Yanqing did not return home immediately. At this moment, he was feeling vexed. After much thought, he decided to go to Meng Qingshua's place, but would he have to face that frowning face again if he went there? Just thinking about it made him sick of it. Forget it. Since I'm feeling upset, I'll go and have a drink. King's Descent Bar. This bar was invested in by a young master from the upper-class circle. Many young masters and ladies from the upper-class circle would patronize this place, and Mu Yanqing would often come here to drink. Whenever he was in a bad mood, he would come here and order a few bottles of wine. He would sit alone in a corner and drink silently. Coupled with the strong alcohol and the deafening music, it would always be able to get rid of all those troubles. Chapter 2295. As soon as Mu Yanqing stepped into the bar, he was greeted by loud and lively music. As usual, he ordered a few bottles of imported wine and sat down in the private room. After the wine was served and the bartender mixed it, he poured himself a glass and downed it in one gulp. After downing the cup of wine, his gloomy mood was relieved a little. How satisfying! Mu Yanqing had just calmed down a little when Lin Shuya's disgusting face appeared in his mind again. Mu Yanqing, it's the elder's wish to marry you. But if you want to touch me, you'll have to see if I'm willing or not. The key is whether you're worthy or not. What a despicable woman. once we're connected, this marriage will only be in name only. Even if you stick to me, I won't cling to you. After all, no one can force me to sleep in the same bed with a man I don't like and even hate a little. Despicable. Despicable. If the man sitting in front of me this time is Mu Yaja, perhaps I'll be willing to suck up to him. But you, no matter how I look at it, can't compare to that brother of yours. In terms of ability, you can't compare to him. In terms of talent, you can't compare to him. Although your face looks decent, you're still a far cry from that. Mu Yancheng, who do you think you are? You told me not to be too self-righteous, but what about you? Don't flatter yourself too much, either. Don't put on an act, it'll only make you look more hypocritical. Despicable. Despicable. Mu Yancheng cursed in his heart as he downed glass after glass of imported wine. In the past, when he entered the bar, he might have been in the mood to wander around the bar in search of prey. But now, he was not in the mood to do so. His mind was filled with Lin Shuia's humiliating words. Every time he thought of her arrogant face, he could not help but want to pinch her face until it was smashed into pieces. Despicable. Brother Yancheng. Amidst the noisy music, a delicate woman's voice suddenly entered his ears. By then, Mu Yancheng had already downed an entire bottle of wine. His alcohol tolerance was not bad, but he definitely could not say that he would not get drunk after 1,000 cups. The bottle of foreign wine was very strong, and the alcohol content was very strong. After drinking it, even his stomach and thoughts became hot. He narrowed his eyes and raised his head. At the end of his line of sight, a woman with light makeup walked into the private room and walked towards him. Mu Yancheng sucked in a deep breath of cold air and took a closer look. This face was not unfamiliar to him, in fact, it was extremely familiar. He was startled at first, and then his eyes widened slightly to take a closer look at the face. When the woman came closer and he could see more clearly, he smiled drunkenly and was a little surprised. Enya. Song Enya was wearing a red spaghetti strap dress, which accentuated her picturesque features and delicate makeup. Her long eyelashes, in particular, were especially charming and alluring. What a coincidence. Mu Yancheng smiled. Why are you in this bar, too? Song Enya smiled slightly and then sat down beside him, deliberately leaning close to him. Her long, wavy hair was right next to him, and her subtle fragrance was seductive. Perhaps it was because his lips were too close, for Mu Yancheng closed his eyes slightly and sniffed greedily. How fragrant! Chapter 2296. Song Enya explained, I was bored, so I asked a few of my best friends to fool around at the bar. She paused for a moment before her red lips parted slightly. Brother Yancheng, let's have a drink together. Her voice was long and soft, which was extremely bewitching. He snorted. Sure, let's have a drink together. With that, he leaned back and relaxed his posture. Song Enya slowly poured 2 glasses of wine and glanced behind her. She saw that Mu Yancheng was dozing off with his eyes closed. He seemed to be a little tipsy, so he did not pay attention to her. She suddenly smiled coldly and took out a small and delicate bottle from her chest. It was so delicate that it was only the size of half a finger. She slowly dripped a drop of essence onto her finger. Then, she gently rubbed it around the edge of the goblet. She then quickly threw the incriminating evidence into the trash can when Mu Yancheng was not paying attention. Picking up the 2 glasses of wine, she turned around and said with a smile, Brother Yancheng, let me toast to you. Mu Yancheng snorted lazily but did not move. His body sank into the sofa and he did not respond. She pouted a little coquettishly. Brother Yancheng, are you drunk? Drunk? His fighting spirit was undoubtedly provoked when he heard this. He opened his eyes and glanced at her unhappily. It's just a few glasses of wine, how can I get drunk? Then, let me toast to you. With that, she smiled and passed the wine glass to him. Mu Yancheng took it from her and raised his wrist slightly to hold the wine glass, gently swirling it. In an unnoticeable moment, the transparent material around the rim of the wine glass silently melted into the wine. Mu Yancheng, on the other hand, did not notice this subtle detail. His attention was not on the wine glass at all. Instead, he sized up the woman beside him from head to toe with a pair of inquisitive eyes. His voice was slurred as he asked, "Enya, why are you dressed so beautifully tonight?" Hearing this, Song Enya pretended to smile shyly and lowered her eyelashes to look seductive. "Brother Yancheng, what are you talking about? I'm clearly beautiful even without dressing up." "That's true. Our family's Enya has already grown into a slender and elegant woman." Mu Yancheng deliberately leaned his body gently toward her and raised his hand to gulp down the wine in the wine glass, leaving not a single drop behind. After he finished drinking, he didn't forget to show off as he turned the wine glass upside down and gave her a look. "It's done so quickly." Song Enya's red lips parted in surprise, looking extremely flattered. "Brother Yancheng, you're really giving me face." Mu Yancheng was not wary of the woman in front of him, whom he had always regarded as his younger sister. He placed the wine glass on the table and pushed it slightly. "Help me pour another glass." "Yeah." Song Enya nodded, then leaned forward and lowered her body slightly. This action completely exposed the beautiful view in front of her chest. Mu Yancheng had a panoramic view of her plump and seductive beauty. If this woman was not Song Enya and could not be overstepped, he would have long pulled her into his arms and ravaged her ruthlessly. However, for some reason, his endurance was pitiful tonight. With just a glance, he could vaguely feel his body heating up slightly. His temples, in particular, were throbbing violently. Chapter 2297. Resisting the urge to probe further, he reached out his fingers and gently massaged his temples. He closed his eyes and tried his best to get rid of those uncontrollable thoughts, but the more he tried to suppress them, the more they went out of control. A numbing electric current shot up from his waist. He shuddered and clenched his fists tightly, forcing himself to keep a distance from her. Song Enya brought over another glass of wine and raised a brow. "Here. Brother Yancheng, can you still drink?" "I don't want to drink anymore." He waved his hand, obviously not in the right state. "If I drink any more, I'll probably get into trouble." In a certain aspect, men were not like women who could always maintain their rationality and were easily driven by lust. He waved his hand and emphasized again, "I'll get drunk if I drink any more. I've seen Brother Yancheng's alcohol tolerance before. It's clearly very good, but you don't seem to be in the best condition tonight." Despite saying this, she did not deliberately suppress the wine. Instead, she put the wine glass aside, turned around, and gently snuggled up to him. She deliberately flirted with him. Her every move was seductive, but she pretended to be reserved. On the surface, she kept a distance from him, but her feigned unintentional behavior was extremely seductive. She turned her head and saw that his face was flushed and his veins were bulging. She knew very well that the drug would soon take effect after drinking a glass of wine. Slowly, under the effects of the drug, Mu Yancheng felt increasingly stuffy and suffocated. He subconsciously buckled his tie, tugged at it, and loosened a button on his collar. However, he still felt that he couldn't breathe. Drunk? Drunk. He should be drunk, that shouldn't be the case. Normally, it would take at least 2 bottles of this kind of wine to get so drunk. Mu Yancheng shook his head violently. When he opened his eyes again, they were already bloodshot. "Enya," he opened his mouth in a daze and spat out a few words. He stammered, "I think I'm a little drunk." "You drank too much tonight, didn't you?" Song Enya gently stroked his shoulder and muttered, "Brother Yancheng, is there something on your mind? Just now, I saw you sitting in the corner drinking alone. It was said that a person who drank alone would get drunk faster. Is there something bothering you?" "Ha! Ha!" Mu Yancheng smiled bitterly and said, "T today, AB *tch looked down on me. Enya, do you think Brother Yancheng is really not as good as that lad? That kid?" Song Enya was perplexed. Who? Mu Yaja. Mu Yanqing spat out the name through gritted teeth. This name was like a fishbone in his heart. Song Enya's body trembled slightly when she heard that name. Her face turned cold for a moment before her lips curled into a smile. How can that be? How is Brother Yanqing inferior to him? Really? Yes. Brother Yanqing, don't belittle yourself. I think you're very outstanding, especially. Song Enya gently placed her hand on his thin lips, trailing it along his jaw and all the way down to his heart. Brother Yanqing, if any woman catches your eye, it's a blessing that she has accumulated in her previous life. Heh. Chapter 2298. Enya, your little mouth is so sweet. His sudden attack seemed to have given her a great shock. She sucked in a breath of cold air and reached out to push him away. She appeared to be a little flustered and helpless. Brother Yanqing, don't do this, Enya, you're so beautiful tonight. With a smirk on his face, he reached out and rubbed that beautiful patch of skin. SSS, the exquisite sensation made him close his eyes involuntarily and lean on her body greedily. At this moment, the medicinal properties in his body were completely activated. His body temperature kept rising, burning her in an instant. She suddenly realized that the drug in the man beside her had completely taken effect. She could not help but struggle for a while before coaxing, Brother Yanqing, you're drunk. Let me send you home, okay? I don't want to go home. He hugged her impatiently and mumbled drunkenly, I want you. I only want you. While Song Enya dealt with him, she thought to herself, this medicine is really powerful. It's not like the common knockout drugs in the market. She didn't know where Jiang Qimeng got it from, but when she gave it to her, she repeatedly reminded her that the medicinal properties of this medicine would take effect very quickly. If it was mixed with wine and drunk in a cup, the medicinal properties would completely take effect within a few minutes. Furthermore, it would cause people to have hazy hallucinations. It was a hallucinogenic drug. She did not expect the drug's effect to be stronger than she had imagined. Mu Yanqing's body was crooked as he kissed her face in a daze. At the same time, he kept muttering, it's so hot, it's so hot. Mu Yanqing could not withstand such a strong drug effect. Besides, he had drunk a lot of wine earlier, so he was already drunk. Now, he felt even hotter. He leaned back on the sofa and could not help reaching out to buckle his necktie. He tugged at it repeatedly, as if he could only feel better after getting rid of the tie's restraints. Seeing that he was free from her, Song Enya sat up nervously. D*MN man. How can he be so strong? She cursed him viciously in her heart as she lowered her head to examine her body. The straps of her neat dress had fallen off and slid down her shoulders. The hem of her dress had been ravaged by him until it was incomparably wrinkled. Just now, his ferocious movements had actually almost torn her underwear. She felt uneasy and glanced at the man beside her from the corner of her eyes. She didn't know when he had sat up, but he was staring at her with a gloomy face. His eyes were like torches, sharp and frightening. Why are you here? Song Enya was bewildered by his abrupt question. She widened her eyes in confusion and stared back at him. Brother Yanqing, what do you mean by that? Her soft and gentle greeting of Brother Yanqing actually turned his originally sharp expression into one of tenderness. It was an incomparably soft and affectionate feeling. Mu Yanqing's body swayed slightly as he shook his head. When he opened his eyes again, they were incomparably gentle. Chapter 2299. Just like when they had first met, she was like a budding flower. She looked at him shyly with her fluttering eyelashes, looking very lovable. Qing Xue. Mu Yanqing smiled foolishly, his thin lips parting slightly as he murmured. With that, he leaned over and pulled the missy into his embrace. Xue, don't leave me, Song Enya was confused as she listened to this delirious man mumbling incoherently. She could not make out what he was saying. It seemed that he had completely lost his mind. She chuckled and said, Brother Yanqing, let me send you home, okay? Okay. I'll go home with you, Song Enya's lips twitched again. She took a deep breath and carefully adjusted her posture to prevent him from hurting the child in her womb. Ever since that incident, she had been locked up at home by Song Zhenghua and was not allowed to go anywhere. Initially, she was determined to get rid of the child. However, for some reason, she had a dream one night. She dreamed that the child was born. It was as adorable as a porcelain doll with fair skin and jade bones. It nestled in her arms and babbled, "Mommy, Mommy." When she woke up from her dream, she leaned against the headboard with mixed feelings and gently caressed her belly. For some reason, her maternal instincts were awakened by this dream. Yes. This was her flesh and blood, too. As a mother, she actually wanted to kill this little life. No matter how bad it was, she wanted to keep this child. After all, it was her flesh and blood. From then on, she no longer secretly dumped the food delivered by the servants into the trash can. Instead, she worked hard to nourish her body and replenish her nutrients, hoping that she could give birth to this little life healthily. "Someone, come in." A bodyguard walked into the private room expressionlessly. "Missy, what are your orders? Is the car ready?" "Yes, it's ready. It's waiting at the door now." Song Enya nodded and gestured to Mu Yancheng. "Carefully help him into the car." "Yes." Mu Yancheng was a little heavy, and she could not lift him at all. Fortunately, she had the foresight to bring a bodyguard with her. The bodyguard helped Mu Yancheng into the car. Song Enya also got in and sat in the back seat. The car sped away from the hotel. Along the way, Mu Yancheng had completely lost his rationality. Like a starving wolf, he pounced on her body and kissed her while his other hand followed his instinct to ignite her body. No matter how chaste a woman was, she would not be able to resist the ferocious medicinal properties of this medicine, let alone a man. Song Enya could not stand his harassment any longer. She frowned and pushed his shoulder repeatedly. "Brother Yancheng, don't, bear with it. We'll be home soon." Mu Yancheng was pushed some distance away by her. Between their mouths, sparkling and translucent strands of silver could be seen. It was an ambiguous and beautiful sight. The whole car was filled with a heart-pounding temperature. The chauffeur heard heavy breathing coming from the back seat and could not help sneaking a glance at the rearview mirror. However, when he glanced at the rearview mirror, he met Song Enya's sharp gaze. "What's there to see?" Chapter 2300. And no. Drive properly. Yes. Missy. The chauffeur knew his place. The car soon arrived at the hotel. Song Enya immediately pushed the door open and instructed the chauffeur, "Keep an eye on him." Yes. As Song Enya spoke, she turned to look at Mu Yancheng meaningfully before smiling gently at him. "Brother Yancheng, I'll be right back." "Don't go, Bam." The only response he got was the cold sound of the door slamming shut. 5 minutes later, the woman returned. However, it was not Song Enya but another woman. This woman was also wearing a long red dress. Her figure was similar to Song Enya's, and she had the same exquisite makeup. At first glance, they looked very similar. After opening the car door, the woman leaned over and spoke in a soft and charming voice, "Brother Yancheng, let's go home." Qingxue, Mu Yancheng continued to repeat this name as he allowed the woman to support him. They staggered into the hotel, passed through the magnificent lobby and long corridor, and entered the elevator. Pushing open the door of the hotel room, the woman helped Mu Yancheng into the room. Just as she led him to the bedroom nearby, Mu Yancheng instantly turned the tables. He held her shoulders, flipped her over, and pressed her down on the bed. The woman's breathing was a little hurried, and he was also panting heavily. Lying on top of her, he stared at her. The woman under him was charming and alluring, but in his eyes, only Meng Qingshue's charming face appeared in the end. This drug would cause people to hallucinate. He would see whoever he thought of. "Qingxue." He muttered under his breath and suddenly lowered his head to kiss those soft red lips. He reached out his hand and roughly pulled off her shoulder strap. There was almost no foreplay. On this king-sized bed, he fiercely took possession of the woman under him. Qingxue. Qingxue, in the rhythm, he kept repeating this name. He was intoxicated and crazy for her. In the midst of sex, he wanted her and thought of the other her. His memories were overturned. Yancheng, the woman under him, responded to him. Mu Yancheng lowered his head and seemed to see Meng Qingshue's shy and charming eyes. They were captivating. His lower abdomen tightened and he almost released all of it. Song Enya pushed open the door and entered the room. Standing in the living room, she could hear the man's heavy panting and the woman's coquettish moaning coming from the bedroom. The effects of the medicine had to be neutralized. But now that she was pregnant, it was naturally inconvenient. Fortunately, under the effects of the drug, this man could not recognize who he was having sex with. When he was tired, the effects of the drug had worn off, and he fell asleep. She would switch places. When Mu Yancheng woke up the next morning and saw her, he would naturally assume that she was the woman he had spent the night with. At the thought of this, she suddenly flashed a flirtatious smile. She unintentionally turned her head, only to catch sight of her pale and embarrassed face in the mirror. She suddenly felt that she looked a little pitiful. Pitiful. Lamentable, lamentable. How could she have fallen to such a state? She actually did not hesitate to trample on herself like this, just for a status. Song Enya trembled as she touched her face. Pursing her lips, a vicious glint flashed across her eyes. What's the point of thinking about something so useless? Since things had already come to this, he should grit his teeth and take the final step. Chapter 2301. At the thought of this, she sneered and returned to her senses. She then strode into the private room. Inside the private room, there was a charming scene. Mu Yancheng and another woman were entangled together. The room was filled with the light of spring, and it was a little absurd. The two were so immersed in their lovemaking that they did not notice her arrival at all. Song Enya leaned against the door and watched silently. It was so annoying. She turned around and was about to leave when the phone behind her suddenly rang, startling the woman on the bed. The woman looked up and was about to search for the source of the ringtone when she saw her. She almost let out a scream. Song Enya put a finger to her lips and shushed her, indicating for her to keep quiet. The woman was tactful and lowered her head. Song Enya swept her gaze across the floor. Her suit jacket had fallen to the ground, and the ringtone was coming from inside the jacket. She quickly walked over and took out the phone from the jacket pocket, only to see the name, Qingxue, on the screen. Is this his woman? She could not help but grip the phone tightly. She glanced at the woman on the bed and then turned to leave the bedroom with the phone. In the apartment, Meng Qingxue sat on the sofa in the living room, holding the phone tightly. However, no one picked up the phone even after the long beeping. The call was quickly disconnected. Why isn't he picking up? It's already so late. Could it be that he's already asleep? Meng Qingxue placed the phone on the sofa in a daze and silently glanced at her feet. It was a packed luggage bag with some simple clothes and documents inside. Other than that, there was nothing else. Everything in the apartment had already been packed. Whether it was the jewelry, the expensive car, or the clothes that he had given her, they had all been put away. The only things that she had taken away were some of the accompanying clothes and some money that she had withdrawn from his account. It was not much, but she thought that if she lived in a small city with one bedroom and one living room, it should be enough to cover her expenses for a year or two. She was pregnant, and she did not know if she could find a job to support her family with her current condition. Therefore, to be safe, she thickened her skin and withdrew a sum of money from his account. She was leaving this city, however, after walking one round around the room, she couldn't bear to leave. He was her first man. This phone call was her last hope for that man. Even if it was just one sentence, no, just 3 words, "You're not allowed to leave." She would also obediently stay in this apartment, just like a guard, waiting for the day when he would come. However, the only response she got was the beeping sound of the phone not being picked up. Meng Qingxue was unwilling to give up. She picked up the phone again. She didn't care if she was scolded for being unreasonable or humiliated. She just wanted to hear his voice. Such a small request wasn't too greedy, right? Meng Qingxue nervously picked up her phone. Her fingers trembled as she found his number. However, she could not muster up the courage to press the dial button. After a long mental struggle, she finally mustered up the courage to make the call. At the same time, the screen flashed and the caller ID popped up. It was a call from Mu Yancheng. Meng Qingxue's face lit up with joy. She quickly picked up the call and put the phone to her ear. Chapter 2302. An unfamiliar woman's cold voice could be heard from the other end. Who are you? The woman's voice was arrogant and contemptuous as she questioned her coldly. Meng Qingxue was stunned. Seeing that Meng Qingxue did not reply, Song Enya became even more impatient and asked coldly, "Why aren't you saying anything? Who are you looking for when you're calling?" The phone fell to the ground with a thud. Meng Qingxue covered her trembling lips sadly as big drops of tears rolled down her cheeks. It's so late. It's already so late. Why is his phone with a woman? Is it really because he has fallen in love with someone else that he hasn't visited me for so long? What is this? I'm not his official wife. I'm just a canary that he's keeping by his side. I don't even have a basic status. What does he mean by falling in love with someone else? What kind of love is this? This unfamiliar woman called back and used her status as his official wife to interrogate me about my identity. How ironic. Could it be that he didn't even have her saved name in his phone? At this thought, Meng Qingxue was even more devastated. She felt that her feelings for him were all one-sided. She was deeply in love with this man, but now it seemed so ironic and laughable. Song Enya held the phone and vaguely heard a woman's desperate sobbing from the other end. She knew her name. Her contact number was in Mu Yancheng's phone. She took the opportunity to read through his messages earlier. No wonder Mu Yancheng kept muttering that name while hugging her. It seemed that she was one of his little lovers. Actually, she was not in the mood to care how many lovers he had, but on second thought, Mu Yancheng would be her husband in the future. Since he would be her husband, perhaps it would be a marriage without many feelings, but there were some things that she had to care about. He kept calling Qingxue when he was drunk. She must be a woman who held a lot of weight in his heart. Therefore, she should at least show her who's boss. Song Enya held the phone and said arrogantly and coldly, "Are you still there? Speak." Meng Qingxue picked up the phone again with trembling hands and asked cautiously, "Is Yancheng there?" "I'm looking for him." "Oh, brother Yancheng." Song Enya sneered. "Why are you looking for him?" Meng Qingxue felt as if a knife was being twisted in her heart when she heard the woman address her so intimately. She bit her lips tightly. "He's with me, but he's tired now, so he's asleep." Meng Qingxue was stunned, her eyes widening in disbelief. "Don't call me again in the future." With that, the Missy hung up the phone. He was already asleep. He was with her. Who was she to him? His woman? Or was she just one of his many lovers? However, Meng Qingxue felt particularly upset when she heard her addressing Mu Yancheng in such an intimate manner. Damn it! She must be crazy. Why did she make this call? Meng Qingxue cried out in grief. She covered her face and wailed wantonly. Song Enya's every word was like a sharp knife cutting into her heart. She felt as if her flesh and blood were about to be torn apart. It was as painful as being twisted by a knife. Her heart hurt so much, boo-hoo, her sobs gradually turned into heart-wrenching wails. She could not take it lying down. Chapter 2303. Even if it was just to hear his voice before she left, was that still an extravagant hope? Meng Qingxue wiped her tears fiercely, stood up abruptly, picked up her luggage, and walked towards the door. But just as she reached out and touched the doorknob, she turned back and took a look at every corner of the apartment. She couldn't bear to leave. Big drops of tears rolled down her cheeks as she sobbed. Every corner of the apartment made her feel reluctant to leave. They had once made love to each other on that big bed. She had once laid her head on his lap like a spoiled child on the sofa in the living room. In the dining room, she could even vaguely see her busy cooking for him. Even now, his jacket was still hanging on the balcony. The most painful distance between them was when he wasn't by her side, but he was in her heart. No matter what she saw, it was as if she was seeing him. Meng Qingxue slid to the ground. Holding on to her last hope, Meng Qingxue bit her lip and held back her tears as she dialed the last number. No matter who picked up, she had to hear his voice. This was probably the last bit of courage she had left. From the beginning of this relationship, she had always been the passive party. She was weak and petty. When he didn't think of her, she guarded this small apartment like a person who stayed behind and waited for him to come. She didn't dare to ask for too much and was as petty as a beggar. Sometimes, when she missed him, she wanted to hide under the blanket and cry silently. But in the end, she didn't dare to disturb him. When he thought of her and came here, she was overjoyed like a childish child. The petty and helpless feeling she had when she missed him was instantly swept away, and she was beaming with joy. She hoped that he would truly place her in his heart and love her, so that she wouldn't be lonely and have no home to go to. She loved him, but she was incomparably petty and lowly, as low as the dust. But in exchange for her cowardice, he didn't care. This was the first time she had mustered up her courage, but it was also the last time. Meng Qingxue held the phone tightly. She only hoped that when the call went through, she could hear his voice as usual. Even if it was an impatient voice. Meng Qingxue widened her eyes. She was so nervous that she felt a little suffocated. However, just as the call connected and she was about to speak, she suddenly heard the sound of a man and a woman making love. His flirtatious voice continued to enter her ears through the receiver. There was probably nothing that could defeat a person more easily than such a voice. It was direct and brutal. She couldn't hear the woman's voice clearly, but she could hear the man's voice clearly. It was a familiar voice. It was him, it was really him. On such a night, he was by another woman's side. Was it that woman just now? She purposely picked up the call so that she could hear how she was pleasuring Mu Yanqing under her. So, at this moment, someone had already taken her place. He didn't need her anymore. And she was no longer needed. Meng Qingxue's lips parted as she laughed with hollow eyes. However, before this kind of laughter could be heard, salty tears had already slipped into the gap between her lips. Why did he have to use such a cruel method? He wasn't asleep, was he? He had also tacitly agreed to use this method to completely destroy her last bit of obsession, right? Chapter 2304. She abruptly threw the phone away, as if that would save her from the bone-chilling humiliation. Meng Qingxue leaned against the door and slowly fell to the floor. She bit her lower lip hard and dug her sharp fingertips into her palms. She glanced at the plane ticket on the table and, as if she had made up her mind, slowly stood up. Midnight. Song Enya sat in the living room with her arms crossed and eyes closed. Mu Yanqing's phone was quiet on the sofa. After the call just now, that woman named Qingxue seemed to be tactful and did not call him again. After a long period of passion, the bedroom gradually returned to silence. The woman put on her clothes and walked out of the room. She saw Song Enya sitting on the sofa as if she had been waiting for a long time. She licked her dry lips and walked up to her. Miss Song, her voice was weak, with an inexplicable sense of inferiority. Song Enya opened her eyes a little and raised her head to look at her. Is it over? Yes. It's over. Where is he? He's already asleep. Since the drug had worn off, he naturally fell asleep from exhaustion. Song Enya sat up straight. The woman standing in front of her had a face that was somewhat similar to hers. However, when the makeup was washed off, the resemblance was not so obvious. She did not know how long the two had been entangled, but at this moment, the woman's face could not hide her exhaustion. Her hair was messy and one of her eyelashes was missing. Song Enya could not help feeling puzzled when she saw a cut at the corner of her lips. What's with the corner of your lips? Corner of my lips, the woman touched her upper lip in surprise and hissed in pain. I think he bit me. I didn't notice it just now. Ha! Song Enya raised a brow. She then picked up a leather bag from the sofa and took out a thick stack of money. This woman had just graduated from university and stayed in the capital after graduation. It was said that her boyfriend was in urgent need of a sum of money for his postgraduate studies, so she thought of this method to raise the money. 50,000 yuan was just a few words to Song Enya, but it was not a small sum to her. She glanced at the money before tossing it on the table. There's a total of 50,000 yuan here. Do you want to count them? No need. The woman smiled awkwardly and said, Miss Song said that it's 50,000 yuan, so it must be true. As she spoke, she reached out to take the money. Wait. Song Enya suddenly spoke up to stop him. The woman's eyes widened in surprise. She furrowed her brows and looked at her in confusion. Do you have any other orders? Song Enya suddenly asked, This is your first time, right? The woman was stunned and nodded awkwardly. Is it a safe period? Safe period? I haven't studied it before, so I don't know much about it. Song Enya smiled. She then glanced at a pill and a glass of water on the table and ordered, Take this medicine. This is. The woman was surprised. Don't worry, it's not poison. Song Enya added, It's a morning after pill. I've taken the morning after pill before. It's effective for 72 hours. What she was thinking was that it would not be good to take too much of such medicine, right? Chapter 2305. I didn't see it, so it doesn't count. The girl could not help but clench her fists tightly. This woman was more heartless than she had imagined. Sucking in a deep breath of cold air, she stared intently at the stack of cash on the table. Gritting her teeth, she picked up the glass of water, mixed it with the pill, and gulped it down. When the pill slid down her throat, she put down the glass of water and pursed her lips. Miss Song, I'm done. Are you satisfied now? Yes. Taking this medicine is good for me, and it's good for you too. I think you don't want a child to appear out of nowhere. I heard that you did this behind your boyfriend's back. You should have done it cleanly, right? Yes, you're right, Miss Song. Then, may I leave this place now? Song Enya nodded her head in tacit agreement. She then gestured to the money on the table and said, Take it. Thank you. The woman did not seem to feel humiliated. Just as she took the money and was about to leave, Song Enya suddenly called out to her. Wait. What's wrong now? The woman was a little annoyed, but she restrained herself. Turning around, she saw the other's cold and meaningful expression. Remember to keep your mouth shut. Only you and I know about this. If a third party finds out about this, you should know what I'm capable of, right? The last sentence was dragged out, but it sent chills down one's spine. The woman could not help but shudder. She glanced at the other's incomparably gloomy face and felt her hair stand on end. She hurriedly said, Miss Song, don't worry. I'll definitely keep this a secret. There will definitely not be a third person who knows about this matter. You'll do your best. The woman nodded hurriedly. Then, she pulled her coat tightly around her, opened the door, and fled the place. The door slammed shut with a bang, and the spacious suite fell into silence. Song Enya glanced coldly at the phone on the sofa and then slowly stood up. She walked to the mirror and looked at her face in it. Then, she bit the corner of her lower lip hard. His strength was so great that it didn't take long for the corner of his lips to be bitten by his teeth. Wisps of blood flowed out. Narrowing her eyes, Song Enya suddenly reached out and messed up her hair with all her might. At the same time, she tore at her clothes with all her might. Her shoulder straps and skirt were all torn apart. As if to create a realistic effect, she actually ruthlessly messed up her own body. Song Enya took another look at her disheveled appearance in the mirror before walking into the bedroom with her chest held high in satisfaction. In the bedroom, the bed was a mess. Mu Yanqing was lying on the bed in a disheveled state. His tall figure took up more than half of the 3-meter-long bed. Song Enya glanced out of the window. Unknowingly, it was already past 3 o'clock. Dawn would break soon. She slowly laid down beside him, but her eyes were still open. She didn't immediately fall asleep. Since he had already come this far, he would not give up until he achieved his goal. She couldn't afford to lose. When Mu Yanqing regained consciousness, he suddenly felt a splitting headache before he even opened his eyes. His head was so painful that it felt as if it was about to explode. When he opened his eyes slightly, the nerves in his eyes twitched violently. What's going on? Chapter 2306. My head feels heavy and painful. What exactly happened? Why does my head hurt so badly? Mu Yanqing lay motionless on the bed. Even though he was already awake, he did not open his eyes immediately. His consciousness was in a state of complete paralysis. Even though he was awake, his nerves seemed to be under control. Even lifting his fingers was strenuous. What happened? He vaguely remembered that he drank a lot last night. Could it be because he was drunk? It couldn't be, right? His head had never hurt like this after a hangover in the past. What in the world had happened? Mu Yanqing tried to recall, but his mind went blank. He vaguely remembered that he seemed to have met Song Enya last night and drank 2 glasses of wine with her before he gradually lost consciousness. In his hazy state of mind, he seemed to see Meng Qingshua's gorgeous red lips struggling against his body, her eyes hazy with tears. Brother Yanqing, don't, her aggrieved and accusatory voice kept echoing in his ears. However, he did not know if the memory was too vivid, but he actually heard that intermittent sobbing sound again. No. This is not a hallucination. Mu Yanqing opened his eyes abruptly. The moment his eyes widened, all of his senses became incomparably sharp. Hence, he could hear the sobbing sound coming from beside him even more clearly. The moment he opened his eyes, he found himself in an unfamiliar room with a huge bed and luxurious furnishings. The room was dimly lit with curtains. Woo woo woo, the sobbing sound entered his ears and became increasingly clear. Mu Yanqing sat up abruptly and turned his head in the direction of the sound. His abrupt action undoubtedly frightened the person beside him. He saw a woman in a red dress curled up at the head of the bed. When she saw that he had woken up, she let out a startled cry and hugged her body in fear as she trembled. Don't come over, I beg you. Brother Yanqing, don't come over. Mu Yanqing was stunned by her trembling sobs for half a second before he quickly realized who this woman in front of him was. Song Enya. This realization left him completely dumbfounded. Even though the woman before him was dressed in rags, her hair was messy, and her makeup was ruined by her tears, he was able to immediately identify her from her trembling voice. Song Enya's voice was very recognizable, especially when she was crying. One would never forget it after hearing it once. Why was it her? Mu Yanqing was stunned for a few seconds. When he saw her trembling in fear and did not know what had happened, he could not help but lean toward her. Enya, ah. Song Enya was so frightened that she retreated even further until she had shrunk into a corner. With nowhere to hide, her tears flowed even more violently and her cries became even more tragic. Brother Yanqing, don't come over. I'm scared. Sob sob sob. Please, let me go. Mu Yanqing was even more stunned now. What the hell was this? Why was she crying? Also, why was she in such a sorry state on his bed? What in the world happened? After losing consciousness yesterday, he vaguely remembered that he had uncontrollably intertwined with a woman. In his memory, he saw Meng Qingshua's face. What in the world happened? Why was she crying the moment he woke up? Chapter 2307. Liar. Brother Yanqing, you're a big liar. She lost control of herself when she heard this and burst into tears. Mu Yanqing was even more confused and did not know whether to laugh or cry. The more she cried, the more confused he became. However, when he lowered his head, he caught a glimpse of a bright red bloodstain in the middle of the messy bed under the blanket. He was stunned for a few seconds before he reached out and lifted the blanket, only to discover the bloodstains on the bed. Mu Yanqing thought of a frightening possibility and widened his eyes abruptly. Glaring at her, he pointed at the scattered bloodstains on the bed. "Is this yours?" Song Enya continued to cry and did not answer his question. However, the sorrowful and aggrieved expression on her face clearly confirmed his suspicions. D***MN. He was no longer a naive teenager. He would never think that these bloodstains were from a girl's menstrual period. It was not that he had never played with a virgin before. It would be ridiculous if he still could not figure out what had happened at this juncture. He lowered his head to examine himself again. He had taken off all his clothes except for a shirt and a pair of socks. His lower body was naked. He did not need to think about what had happened. It was just that, he wanted to recall the scene last night, but he could not figure out what had happened. Mu Yanqing quickly realized what had happened last night. He raised his head abruptly and looked at Song Enya, tongue-tied. Song Enya's tears flowed even more violently and fell continuously. When she saw that he had regained his senses, her face became even more embarrassed. She covered her mouth tightly and let out intermittent sobs. "Don't cry, don't cry." Mu Yanqing's head swelled as he tried to comfort her. "Don't cry. What exactly happened last night? Brother Yanqing, how could you do this?" Song Enya cried aggrievedly as she spoke with much difficulty. Mu Yanqing was stunned when he heard this. What should I do? Song Enya broke down and covered her face in embarrassment. This is my first time. Boom. Mu Yanqing's mind exploded with white light all of a sudden. He furrowed his brows and looked at her helplessly, feeling even more uneasy. Enya, don't cry, okay? I'm a bastard. I was drunk last night and didn't know anything. Maybe I did something bad to you, but it was unintentional. Song Enya suddenly looked up with a pale face and stared at him with teary eyes. Her lips kept trembling as she mulled over his words. Unintentional? I'm probably drunk, so I can't tell who the woman beside me is. I'm a jerk. I didn't mean to look at you. He explained through gritted teeth. What did Enya do wrong? How could Brother Yanqing do this to me? How could he do such a thing to me? What should I do? Song Enya's body trembled even more at the mention of her sore spot, and she burst into tears. Chapter 2308. Song Enya choked with sobs as she lamented bitterly, Brother Yanqing, I've always treated you as an elder brother. But you actually did such a thing to me. I shouldn't have trusted you. I shouldn't have trusted you. No matter what you said last night, I shouldn't have believed you. I should have left you at the bar and ignored you. But, who asked me to be so soft-hearted? Who asked me to be so soft-hearted? When I saw you drunk like a puddle of mud and mumbling a woman's name, I couldn't bear it. My heart ached for you and I was afraid that you'd be in danger if I left you at the bar, so I kindly offered to send you home. But... At the crucial part, her tears fell even more violently. Mu Yanqing was anxious, but he forced himself to endure it and listen to her patiently. Song Enya wiped her tears and intermittently recounted what happened last night. From her account, Mu Yanqing vaguely knew what had happened last night. Last night, after parting on bad terms with Lin Shuya, he was feeling vexed. He originally wanted to go to Meng Qingshua's place, but just the thought of her gloomy face made him anxious. Hence, he made a detour to the bar and ordered a few bottles of imported wine in an attempt to relieve his frustration. However, halfway through drinking, he happened to meet Song Enya, who was also playing at the bar. Seeing him drinking alone, Song Enya offered to accompany him for a drink. Mu Yanqing was not in a daze at that time. He was still sober and somewhat conscious, but he was also in a tipsy state. Later, for some reason, after a few drinks with Song Enya, he was completely drunk. Song Enya was originally worried that he was drunk, so she wanted to call a cab to send him home. However, he was very drunk at that time and kept mumbling Meng Qingshue's name, saying that he did not want to go home and wanted to go to Meng Qingshue's place. Song Enya cried and said, "How would I know who the name you kept mumbling is? You said that you wanted to go to that woman's place, but I didn't know the address. When I asked you, you wouldn't tell me and kept mumbling that name. I really had no choice, so I thought to send you to a hotel. At least, I'll wait until you're sober." Hence, she called for a chauffeur and sent him to the hotel. Along the way, Mu Yanqing began to grope her. He hugged her while calling out Meng Qingshue's name. Song Enya endured it. She had intended to leave after sending him to his room. However, as soon as she pushed the door open, she was swept up in Mu Yanqing's arms. No matter how hard she struggled, he refused to let go. He carried her all the way to the bedroom, threw her on the bed, and made her his. Mu Yanqing was a little confused after hearing this. But, what she said was true. Even though his memories of the previous night were hazy, he could still vaguely recall a woman struggling beneath him, begging for mercy, crying. The feeling of breaking through that barrier was so clear. He thought that the woman was Meng Qingxue, so he was unrestrained and had sex with her several times. It was only when he was completely exhausted that he collapsed on the bed and completely lost consciousness. At the thought of this, Mu Yanqing glanced at the bloodstains on the bed from the corner of his eye and his eyelids suddenly became heavy. Could it be, he had really done something disgraceful in a moment of carelessness? Chapter 2309. He often hung around bars. Other than when he was in a bad mood, when he was in the mood, he would hunt for women in bars with his buddies. One-night stands were common, too. However, those women were easy to get rid of. Once they woke up, he would give them some money or bring them to buy some branded jewelry and bags. This time, however, the target was different. Song Enya, the daughter of the Song family, had a brother, Song Yunxi, and a father, Song Zhenghua, the capital's mayor. Her mother had some ties with the Mu family. If the target was her, it would not be easy to get rid of her, let alone offend her. He even heard that this was her first time. First time. She was still a virgin. At the thought of this, Mu Yanqing's scalp turned numb. It was a huge blow. If she was not a virgin, it would be easy to get rid of her. He originally thought that a rich missy like her would play outside often. Even if such an embarrassing thing happened, it would not be so difficult to deal with. But now, Mu Yanqing's head was about to explode. Song Enya curled up in a corner and continued to cry helplessly. What should he do now? He did not know whether to comfort her or ignore her, so he could only sit there and watch her cry in a daze. Just as he was at a loss, he suddenly heard a series of hurried knocks on the door. Enya? Enya? Mu Yanqing's hearing was quite sharp. When he heard the sudden knocking, he turned his head abruptly, only to hear a woman's urgent and agitated voice outside. Enya, are you inside? Enya? Who is it? Mu Yanqing frowned, but behind him, he heard Song Enya crying even more heartbreakingly. Mom, Mom, she hugged her body, but her guilty conscience made her bury her face even lower. Mom. Is it Jiang Qimeng? How did she find this place? Could it be that Song Enya called her? This, Mu Yanqing broke out in a cold sweat. At this moment, outside the door, Jiang Qimeng, who did not get any response, became increasingly nervous and kicked the door. Enya, open the door. Enya, are you there? Your mother is here. Mu Yanqing gritted his teeth. Song Enya continued to cry and did not respond. He sighed. Although he knew that he was in the wrong, with his personality, since he had done something stupid, he should face it. He couldn't just run away and wash his hands clean, right? Mu Yanqing suddenly got up and covered Song Enya with the blanket. After putting on his clothes, he walked to the door and opened it. Seeing the door open, Jiang Qimeng hurriedly rushed in with her men. Behind him were a few servants and bodyguards from the Song family. Jiang Qimeng rushed in hurriedly, only to see Mu Yanqing standing at the door in a disheveled state. She turned pale with fright. You. Yanqing. Hello, auntie. He. He chuckled awkwardly. Why are you here? The smile on Jiang Qimeng's face faded when she saw the mess he was in. You, Song Enya's cries could be heard from the bedroom. Jiang Qimeng's lips twitched as she hurriedly went to the bedroom. Mu Yanqing leaned against the door with a headache and rubbed his temples tiredly. As expected, half a minute later, he heard Jiang Qimeng's agitated scream. Ah! Mu Yanqing, you bastard! Chapter 23:10. Jiang Qimeng's eyes reddened with anger at the sight of Song Enya's pitiful state. She rushed out of the bedroom and started hitting him. B*****. Mu Yanqing, you B*****. What did you do to my Enya? What exactly did you do to her? How did my daughter end up in such a state? Mu Yanqing did not retaliate, nor did he give any explanation. He just let her hit him. She was, after all, a woman. How much strength could she have? Her punches landed on his body, but it did not seem to hurt much. Jiang Qimeng, on the other hand, seemed to have gone mad as she hit him, grabbed his collar, and shook him. B*****. Say something. Why aren't you saying anything? Say it. Say it. What exactly did you do to my Enya? Our Enya is still a virgin. She's not married yet. Are you a beast? How dare you do such a thing to her? How can you ruin my daughter like this? B*****. B*****. Auntie. Mu Yanqing could not take it anymore and reached out to grab her hand. Calm down. Jiang Qimeng's face turned sinister when she heard that. She was so angry that she laughed. Mu Yanqing, are you a B******? How can you ask me to calm down after such a thing happened? I'm already very calm that I didn't kill you for what you did to my daughter. Mu Yanqing, you must give me an explanation today, or else, even if I die, I'll take you down with me. Auntie, do you know the consequences of this matter? My daughter isn't married yet. If this matter gets out, our family's reputation will be ruined by you. Mu Yanqing, what exactly are your intentions to do this to Enya? Jiang Qimeng did not have the patience to listen to his explanation as she questioned him hysterically. Mom. Unknowingly, Song Enya was standing at the door. Holding her collar tightly, she bit her lower lip and looked at her with tears streaming down her face. Let's go home, okay? I want to go home, sob. Enya. Jiang Qimeng immediately went over to her and hugged her shoulders. Don't be afraid. I'm here. Don't cry. I'll definitely seek justice for you. Mu Yanqing furrowed his brows and looked around. The servants and bodyguards of the Song family stood beside him, forming a terrifying encirclement. They stared at him covetously, as if he was a heinous bastard. He clenched his fists and asked, Auntie, you keep saying that you want an explanation from me. Then let me ask you, what explanation do you want from me? His reply made Jiang Qimeng extremely dissatisfied. She said angrily, how dare you speak to me in such a righteous tone after doing such a disgraceful thing? Mu Yanqing, you're too much. Song Enya tugged at her mother's sleeve and stammered, Mom. Brother Yanqing didn't do it on purpose. He got drunk last night and didn't do it on purpose. Jiang Qimeng glared at her daughter in exasperation and said, Enya, I know that you've always been reasonable. However, when such a thing happened, it was definitely not something that could be brushed off with an unintentional mistake. If you're a man, you should take responsibility for your wrongdoings. Song Enya was instantly embarrassed and wanted to cry, but no tears came out. What else can I do? Don't tell me you want Brother Yanqing to marry me. Chapter 23:11. Mu Yanqing's eyes flickered with uncertainty. Marry her. How could he do that? He was going to have a marriage alliance with the Lins. Marry her. What about Lin Shuya, then? Although he and that spoiled woman parted on bad terms yesterday, it did not mean that he would give up on this precious opportunity. Besides, he had always treated Song Enya as his younger sister, so how could he possibly marry her? Mu Yanqing was filled with remorse. How did this happen for no reason? Jiang Qimeng was inwardly annoyed at his silence. Why is this lad so stubborn? He should have taken the initiative to say, I'm willing to marry Enya. That way, everyone would have a way out of this embarrassing situation. She could not possibly take the initiative to say, since you've done such a thing, I can only let Enya suffer a little and marry you. If she were to say that, it would seem very deliberate and shameless, as if she was hell-bent on marrying him. The Song family was, after all, a prestigious family. They could not possibly say such embarrassing things. The more she thought about it, the angrier she became. Mu Yanqing slowly said, since it has already happened, we should think of ways to make up for it. I've indeed committed a mistake and ruined Enya, but, this matter has thrown me into a mess. I don't know what to do to make it up to her as much as possible. Auntie, my mind is in a mess right now. Can you let me think about it properly? Jiang Qimeng was so angry that her lips trembled. She opened her mouth a few times, but no words came out of it. For a moment, she did not know how to continue the conversation. Mu Yanqing seemed to have seen through her worries and smiled bitterly. I, Mu Yanqing, may not be a hero, but I'm still an upright man. Since I've done something wrong, I'll definitely take responsibility for it and won't run away from it. Auntie, don't worry, I'll keep my word and promise. It's good that you can say that. She gritted her teeth and said hatefully, Enya has been wronged, we can't let it go just like that. Our families have been friends for many years, so I don't want to make our families unhappy because of this matter. Since you've said so, I'll bring Enya home first. Once you've thought it through, come to the Songs to look for me. Mu Yanqing nodded with a complicated expression. After the two left, Mu Yanqing let out a deep breath of cold air and walked to the shower room to take a cold shower with his clothes on. The heater was on in the suite and it was extremely hot. Coupled with the inexplicable ruckus earlier, Mu Yanqing felt that he had nowhere to vent his anger. Suddenly, he raised a fist and slammed it hard against the wall. Only then did he seem to have vented his anger and walked out of the shower. She walked into the living room and saw the phone on the sofa. She picked it up and made a call, ordering the housekeeper to send another set of clothes. After hanging up the phone, he suddenly saw a missed message. It was from Meng Qingxue. An ominous premonition rose in Mu Yanqing's heart. He frowned and opened the message. Yanqing, I'm leaving. I'm determined to leave you and this city. Perhaps, I'll never come back. Mu Yanqing raised his head abruptly before he could finish reading it. With a vicious look on his face, he abruptly turned around and dashed out of the door, ignoring the fact that he was drenched. Chapter 23:12. There are many memories of you in this city. I can't bear to part with them, but I have to force myself to. Mu Yanqing rushed out of the hotel. As he dialed Meng Qingshue's number continuously, he walked to the roadside and reached out to flag down a cab. The other party did not pick up the call. The beeping sound constantly disturbed his heartbeat. He had never realized that Meng Qingxue held such an important place in his heart. Sometimes, people were really cheap. It was impossible to understand how important each other was until the moment of separation. At the thought of not having Meng Qingxue by his side in the world from now on, he could not help but completely lose his mind. It was not that he had never thought of breaking up with her. He had vowed to break up with her, but when it really came down to it, he actually felt reluctant and a kind of despair. It was as if the world was ending. In his mind, the memories of the two of them kept replaying like a revolving lantern. Mu Yanqing's breathing suddenly quickened. I can't let her go. The contents of the message slowly flooded into his mind. Don't look for me. Just pretend that we never met. I'll forget about you, and you'll forget about me too, right? Standing on the street, he kept flagging down cars. He was in a sorry state and looked wet. None of the passing drivers were willing to drive him. After much difficulty, he finally flagged down a car. Mu Yanqing did not hesitate this time. He opened the door and got into the car. Sitting in the back seat, he ordered, "Chauffeur, to Fengchen International." The chauffeur turned around and looked at him speechlessly. He was so wet that even the seat cushion was wet. When the chauffeur saw this, he frowned. "Oh, dear. Sir, look at yourself, you're so wet that you've dirtied my seat cushion." Mu Yanqing said, "I'll pay you for the car wash." This isn't about the car wash. In our line of work, we can't afford to waste even a minute. A quarter of an hour less would mean one less business opportunity to earn money. If I wash this car, I'll lose a few hundred yuan today. Mu Yanqing furrowed his brows and rummaged through the pockets of his coat. Fortunately, his coat was not wet. He fished out a wad of cash from the hidden pocket and handed it over. There was more than 1,000 yuan in it, which should be enough for this trip. "Please. I have something very important to do. If that's not enough, leave your account number and I'll transfer the money to you when I get back." "Forget it. Just treat it as a favor." The driver took the cash with a resentful face and pressed the meter. He picked up his phone again and dialed Meng Qingshue's number repeatedly. However, no one came to his rescue. Mu Yanqing was on the verge of losing his mind as he kept urging the driver to speed up. "Master, faster." The driver smiled helplessly. "Young man, I'm already fast enough. The city is always so congested. I can't possibly run a red light, right? Moreover, there are so many speed detectors on the road. This is a commercial vehicle. If it violates the rules, it will be very troublesome." Mu Yanqing gritted his teeth and clenched his fists in anger. The chauffeur glanced at him and suddenly asked half-jokingly, "You're in such a hurry. Don't tell me that you've made your wife angry and want to run away from home. Is that why you're in such a hurry to persuade her? Don't worry too much. She's running away from home. I don't think she can go anywhere other than her maiden home." "Maiden home? Since when did she have a maiden home?" Chapter 23:13. Apart from him, where else could she go? Where else could she go? The chauffeur, on the other hand, seemed to be enlightened. He shook his head and sighed. "Young man, I've seen a lot of things like this, but I still have something to remind you. Don't care about anything else, just cherish the person in front of you. Home was only where one's wife was. Don't only learn to cherish her when you lose her. By then, it'll be too late. When husband and wife quarrel, you should give in to the woman. After all, we're men." Mu Yanqing did not say a word from the beginning to the end. His face was gloomy. Half an hour later, the car arrived at Fengchen International Apartment. He was secretly annoyed. Why was the hotel so far away from the apartment? As soon as he got out of the car, he rushed into the elevator and pressed the button for his floor. When he reached his floor, he rushed out like the wind. "Qingxue." He stood at the door and banged on it hard. "Qingxue, open the door." "It's me." "Open the door." No one responded to his banging for a long time. Mu Yanqing lost his mind and raised his leg to kick the door hard. This time, the neighbor at the door was even more alarmed. "Who is it? Why is there such a big commotion?" The neighbor opposite opened the door and rubbed his sleepy eyes. When he saw him, he muttered unhappily, "Be quiet. I'm working the night shift. Let's be considerate of each other." Mu Yanqing ignored him. When the man saw him standing at the door, he was suddenly surprised. "Eh? Are you looking for Xiaomeng?" Mu Yanqing turned around abruptly, his eyes bloodshot. "Do you know where she went?" "Oh, my. I saw her leaving with her luggage when I came back from work this morning. I asked her where she was going, but she didn't say much. She just said that she won't be staying here anymore. If anyone comes looking for her, just say that she's gone and is no longer here." After a pause, the man was suddenly shocked by the drastic change in Mu Yanqing's expression. Seeing his face darken, he was so frightened that he did not dare to speak. She left? Yes, the man nodded and said in a daze, I even saw her leave the key to the door in the mailbox. I don't know what's wrong with Xiao Meng. She's always smiling, but when I saw her this morning, I saw her frowning for the first time. Her eyes were red as if she had been crying. Who are you to her? Mu Yanqing furrowed his brows. He could not be bothered to reply to him. Instead, he opened the mailbox beside the door and was shocked to see a key lying quietly beside a bottle of milk. His breathing suddenly quickened, and he slowly took out the key. However, he heard the man's nagging. Xiao Meng's health hasn't been good recently. He's very sick. A while ago, he fainted at the door because of anemia. Fortunately, I discovered it in time and sent her to the hospital. The doctor said that she didn't pay attention to her nutrition during her pregnancy, which led to anemia during pregnancy. Who are you to him? Mu Yanqing turned to look at him and muttered, I'm the child's father. Are you her husband? The man was quite surprised and stared blankly as he said, then why do I rarely see you here? I usually see little Meng alone. That day when I sent her to the hospital, I asked her if she wanted to contact the child's father. She refused to tell me and only said that she was very busy. How busy was he? He didn't take good care of his wife when she was pregnant. Mu Yanqing could not take it anymore. He picked up the key, opened the door, and entered the house. Chapter 23:14. He dialed Meng Qingshua's number again. A few seconds later, a phone rang from the sofa in the living room. Mu Yanqing was shocked. He loosened his grip on the phone and it fell to the ground with a thud. The black screen shattered. He walked over and picked up the phone from the sofa. He opened the messages and saw that there were 2 drafts. For some reason, they were not sent. Mu Yanqing's heart was empty and his expression was numb for a moment. He clicked on the text message and the words jumped out. His originally empty eyes suddenly focused. Yanqing, as you wish, I've aborted the child. This way, you can be at ease and pursue what you want. From now on, we're done. Everything you've given me is in the apartment. I've returned what I owed you, but I don't want you to return what you owe me. I'll just treat it as a dream between us. When I wake up from the dream, it's time to leave. Mu Yanqing, if love really exists in this world, you're probably the first and last person I've ever loved. If love really exists in this world, you're the only one I've ever loved. Mu Yanqing slumped on the sofa and looked up at the ceiling in a daze. Meng Qingshua's innocent face seemed to appear in front of his eyes. That year, for his birthday, she had meticulously prepared a sumptuous feast for him. After blowing out the candles together, she snuggled in his arms and asked coquettishly, Yanqing, can we be together forever? We won't be apart for the rest of our lives. He nodded absent-mindedly. Meng Qingxue was not very satisfied with this perfunctory answer. What's with that? You're patronizing me again. He smiled and scratched her nose. Okay, we'll be together forever and never be apart for the rest of our lives. She smiled. Her eyes seemed to hide countless stars, bright and moving. You'll have to keep your word. If you let me down. What will happen if I let you down? He asked. She snorted and said, if you let me down, I won't want you anymore. I'll leave you and go to a place where you won't be able to find me. I'll never see you again. This willful answer made him burst out laughing. So heartless. Yes. Meng Qingxue nodded heavily. He hugged her and said gently, little liar, you can't leave me. Why? If you leave me, where can you go? In this lifetime, you can only stay by my side forever. After a pause, he added, you need me. When Meng Qingxue heard this, she was a little unwilling. She raised her head and asked carefully, then, do you need me? She asked stubbornly, will you be sad without me? Mu Yanqing covered his face with his trembling hands. His face was expressionless, but the tears that dripped from between his fingers silently betrayed him. Tick-tock, her tears fell onto the screen and she fainted. Yes. He needed her. Airport, waiting room. Meng Qingxue sat in her seat, holding a photo in her hand. She kept rubbing it, but she couldn't stop her tears. Drop by drop, they fell on the photo, smudging a corner. That was the only photo they took, and it was taken in the mall. It was a selfie. She pestered him relentlessly before he agreed to go into the small studio with her and take that one photo. Chapter 23:15. She gripped the corner of the photo tightly and cried pitifully. Dear passengers flying from the capital to Haining, please take note that your flight CA0003 is about to take off. Please bring your belongings, present your boarding pass, and prepare to board the plane at Gate 3. We wish you a pleasant journey. Thank you. Meng Qingxue bit her lower lip hard when she heard the boarding announcement. Reluctantly, she stood up and walked to the dustbin. With tears in her eyes, she pretended to throw the photos into the bin. She turned around, dragged her luggage, and walked toward the boarding gate like a zombie. At the Song residence. When Jiang Qimeng and Song Enya returned, both mother and daughter had different expressions on their faces. The two walked into the bedroom and closed the door. Song Enya turned around and asked worriedly, Mom, what's wrong? Jiang Qimeng looked at her with concern and suddenly asked worriedly, Did the plan go smoothly last night? Yes. Did you do a clean job? He didn't find out anything fishy about you, did he? Song Enya nodded. He did as you said. He was unconscious after taking the medicine yesterday. In addition, he drank so much that he was already unconscious. Even if there were any mistakes, he wouldn't have found out. Jiang Qimeng nodded. Just as she was relieved, Song Enya asked helplessly, But, will Mu Yanqing marry me? That might not be the case now. But if you're pregnant with his child, it'll be different. When the time is right, tell him that you're pregnant with his child. Then, it won't be up to him to decide on the marriage. If it really doesn't work, you can take it to the muse. He won't be in the right. Jiang Qimeng smiled smugly. Don't worry. Just wait patiently and Mu Yanqing will marry you as the young mistress of the Mu family. Song Enya interrupted her anxiously. But, Mom. I'm already 6 weeks pregnant. Although the child in my stomach is Mu Yanqing's, it's already a month old. What if we can't hide it then? So what? Jiang Qimeng did not think much of it. When the child is full term, just say that it's premature. Besides, by then, you'll be married. It's not important how this child came about. What's important is that this child is Mu Yanqing's. It has his blood and it's your child. That's enough. Song Enya still had some concerns and hesitated to speak. Jiang Qimeng walked to her side and sat down. Patting her shoulder gently, she comforted her. What else are you worried about? Tell me. Chapter 23:16. Jiang Qimeng smiled and said earnestly, even if he doesn't become the head of the family, he's still a good choice to marry into. After a pause, she continued, think about it. Although he's a concubine's son, the Mu family is so big, and there are so many concubines' children. Why did Mu Linfeng choose him? This proved that the man, who was able to make a name for himself in such a dangerous place despite looking like a nobody, must be quite capable. It's just that with Yaja around, no matter how outstanding Mu Yanqing is, he's only a foil and his halo is overshadowed. Mu Yanqing is still capable. Even if he doesn't become the head of the family, as long as he steps through the door of the Mu family, he'll grant you glory and wealth. Song Enya nodded lightly when she heard that. My silly lass, don't worry. Just do as I say and don't think too much about anything else. I naturally hope that you'll lead a good life and won't harbor any thoughts of harming you. Hearing her mother's words, Song Enya's last bit of worry was relieved. She climbed into bed and covered herself with the blanket. When Jiang Qimeng saw this, she hurriedly rolled up the blanket for her. Sleep for a while. You must be exhausted from last night, right? Yes, I didn't sleep last night. Quickly rest, then. With that, she walked to the window and drew the curtains for her before leaving the room. Song Enya lay in bed and let her imagination run wild for a while. Soon, she could not resist the sleepiness and fell asleep. The Maldives was warm all year round. As it was located near the equator, the climate here was tropical. Although it was an island country, it did not have a tropical oceanic climate but a tropical rainforest climate. The biggest characteristic of a tropical rainforest climate was that it was rainy and hot. The Maldives only had summer, and the other 3 seasons did not appear at all. However, the summer here was not that hot, and the temperature was maintained at about 30 degrees Celsius. Therefore, after it rained, it would be cooler. The annual rainfall in the Maldives was 1,900 millimeters, and the island and the rain had a different charm. At this moment, Yun Shishir and Mu Yaja were enjoying a sweet vacation on another island. However, at that time, Gong Jie had to take care of his 2 children, and he was having a hard time. In Yu Yu's words, he had to get used to the life of a stay-at-home dad in advance. Early morning. Gong Jie had a nightmare. Half awake, he saw a huge mountain falling from the sky and pressing him down. While he was in a daze, he could clearly feel something heavy pressing down on his body. It was wriggling from time to time. Unable to bear the pressure, he was jolted awake from his dream. When he opened his eyes, he saw Yu Yu's enlarged face right in front of him. She blinked at him and giggled. "Uncle, you're finally awake." Gong Jie's lips twitched. Ah, his vacation. What a disaster. He did not know if it was a good or bad thing to bring these 2 little lads along. The good thing was that these 2 little guys were by his side. When he brought them to play on the island, no annoying women came up to talk to him. It was not that he did not like women. It was just that he did not like women he was not interested in. However, the bad thing was. Chapter 23:17. Uncle, I'm so hungry. How long are you going to sleep for before you bring us to eat something nice? Xiao Yichen lay limply on the edge of the bed and grumbled pitifully. It turned out that he wanted him to bring them to look for food. Gong Jie covered his face helplessly. The veins on his forehead were bulging. Please. What time was it? Moreover, the hotel had prepared food. They could go straight to the restaurant. Yu Yu glared at him as if she had guessed what he was thinking. She said expressionlessly, "Uncle, this hotel doesn't provide Chinese food." "What time is it?" Yu Yu reminded him, "It's already 10:30. Hurry up and get up. Bring us to look for food." Yu Yu threw a pillow at his face. Gong Jie didn't even have the strength to push the pillow away. Why did he feel like he was an eagle? Early in the morning, Yu Yu and Xiao Yichen were like 2 little eagles, surrounding him and asking him to look for food. Sigh, in his imagination, he would hold hands with Yun Shishir, walk on the beach, and play in the sea. But now, it was gone forever. Gong Jie furrowed his brows as he lay on the bed listlessly. Yesterday, after he finally managed to get the 2 little guys to sleep, he was in a rare mood. He went to the bar on the island and drank a few glasses of imported wine. When he returned to the hotel, he slept until now. He could hold his liquor, but after drinking, he would sleep for a long time. In addition, he was jet-lagged recently. Therefore, he was sleepy and lethargic. It was hard to take care of children, especially these 2 energetic little guys. They seemed to have endless energy. After playing with them for an entire day, he was so tired that he almost collapsed. He wanted to cry but had no tears. Gong Jie began to consider if he should just leave the 2 lads on this island and escape from this place. No. If he did that, he would be hunted down by his sister with a rolling pin. Gong Jie shuddered at the thought of that. Just as he was feeling melancholy, wow. Xiao Yichen, come and take a look. Just as he was struggling to open his eyes, Yu Yu, who was lying on top of him, summoned Xiao Yichen as if she had discovered a new continent. Xiao Yichen crawled onto the bed and leaned over. What? What? What is it? Look at Uncle's. Wow, it's so big, where? Wow. Really, really. It's huge. Gong Jia was confused. He hugged his pillow and couldn't see where Yu Yu was looking at. However, the next second, he felt a pair of small hands pulling down his boxers. A certain part of his body was exposed and he heard Yu Yu exclaim in surprise, "Wow! Amazing!" Xiao Yichen said enviously, "Uncle's is very big too. Is it as big as Daddy?" That sounds about right. Anyway, it's bigger than mine. Uncle's is so firm. Gong Jia finally understood what the two little guys were studying while lying on top of him. Just as he was about to sit up, Xiao Yichen happened to sit on his chest and pushed him back down. Yu Yu, do you think we can be like Daddy and Uncle when we grow up? Yu Yu said airily, how would I know? Chapter 23:18. Xiao Yichen also touched it out of curiosity. It's hot. Two hooligans. Gong Jia's face burned with anger. He gritted his teeth and said, "You two idiots, get off of me." Xiao Yichen turned around and covered his mouth with an irritating expression. He snickered and said, "Uncle, it's so early in the morning, but you seem to be very energetic." Gong Jia's face burned even hotter. He clenched his fists tightly and resisted the urge to hit him. He said, "Get off of me. Uncle is angry." Yu Yu snickered and obediently pulled up Gong Jia's pants. He patted him gently with his little hands and said comfortingly, "Okay, okay. We won't study it anymore. We're just curious." Gong Jia was speechless. Little brat. He deserved a beating. Xiao Yichen didn't get off the bed. Instead, he leaned back and lay on Gong Jia's body. He stretched out his limbs and said contentedly, "Lying on Uncle's body is so comfortable." Yu Yu chuckled when he saw this. Then, he pounced on Xiao Yichen. Gong Jia felt as if he was being pressed down by a jack. He was about to be flattened. The three of them were stacked on top of each other like a human pyramid. Xiao Yichen was on top of Gong Jia, while Yu Yu was on top of Xiao Yichen. The two little guys were playing around on top of Gong Jia. Gong Jia was about to cry. "Sister, save me." It was already past 11 o'clock when he finally managed to get rid of the two little guys. After Gong Jia's outburst, Yu Yu and Xiao Yichen learned their lesson and promised repeatedly that they wouldn't mess with him anymore. Gong Jia threatened, "If you continue to mess around, I'll throw the two of you into the sea." Yu Yu said confidently, "Uncle, you're murdering your own nephews." "So what?" Gong Jia stood with his arms crossed and raised his eyebrows coldly. Yu Yu said evilly, "But we're not afraid. If Mommy finds out, she'll definitely throw you into the sea too." Gong Jia, he even knew how to threaten others. Forget it. He didn't want to lower himself to the level of these two little things. Therefore, after tidying up, Gong Jia took the two little guys to look for food. On this island, there was a very famous underwater restaurant called Itha Undersea Restaurant, which meant pearl in the local language. The restaurant was located 6 meters below sea level. The exterior was made of transparent plexiglass, and the walls and roof were made of water-resistant and transparent acrylic materials. Under the warm seawater, the restaurant was surrounded by colorful coral reefs. Various marine life shuttled back and forth between the coral reefs. Dining in such a restaurant under the sea was romantic and sentimental. However, the restaurant wasn't big. It could only accommodate 12 people at the same time. Moreover, it only provided lunch and dinner from 11 p.m. to midnight. Reservations were required 2 weeks in advance. However, Gong Jia naturally didn't need to make a reservation. There was always a seat in the restaurant reserved for him. After passing through the wooden walkway and walking down a few steps, they saw 6 tables. Each table could only seat 2 adults. Gong Jia and the 2 little guys were just right. As soon as they entered the restaurant, Yu Yu and Xiao Yichen were attracted by the unique style of the restaurant. They sat at the table and didn't have the mood to order food. Instead, they leaned against the glass and looked at the tropical fish swimming around outside. It was so interesting. Chapter 23:19. It was indeed very interesting to enjoy the colorful underwater world while eating. The restaurant was expensive to build, so it was not cheap to eat in it. A filet mignon cost $200. Gong Jia saw them leaning against the glass and called out to them a few times, but they ignored him. He had no choice but to order steak and a snack platter for them. At the side, little Yichen began to study the restaurant seriously. Yu Yu, the water pressure in the sea is so high. Do you think the glass will break after a while? No. Although this restaurant is not built in the deep sea, the turbulence in the sea is still very strong. However, the designer must have considered this problem when building this restaurant. Therefore, the materials used must be strong and resistant to water pressure. Xiao Yichen nodded as if he understood. He looked at Yu Yu with a pair of starry eyes. Yu Yu, you know a lot. Did you learn all this from reading books? Please, this is common knowledge. Investing in a restaurant like this underwater must have taken into account many risks. Gong Jia was speechless. It was said that children were lively and had endless energy. They were curious about everything. It was true. Yu Yu was not like this in the past. In the past, he had interacted with him on the internet. He gave off a mature vibe. It was a kind of composure that was hard to come by even for an adult. However, it seemed that after spending so much time with Xiao Yichen, he had been influenced by Xiao Yichen. Most of the time, he was still the mature and sensible Yu Yu. He was gentle but cunning. He was as elegant as a little gentleman. However, at times, he was like a little devil. Occasionally, he would show the naivety and even childishness of a child. At that moment, the restaurant was full. 2 tables were occupied by blonde Europeans. Judging from their facial features, they seemed to be of Dutch descent. Another table was occupied by a customer who spoke with a strong British accent. The other 2 tables were occupied by Asians. It was unknown which country they were from. It was the peak tourist season. Many countries were on holiday. Some people took the opportunity to fly to the Maldives for a vacation. There were also some who chose the Maldives for their honeymoon. They looked in the direction of Yu Yu and Xiao Yichen in surprise. The 2 little guys were mischievous, cute, and silly. Their tender little faces attracted a lot of attention. Looking at Gong Jia, who was sitting at the side, she naturally assumed that the twins were his sons. Such a young stay-at-home dad. The most important thing was that he looked so sexy. His silver hair, which contrasted with his snow-white skin. Although the Europeans appreciated wheat-colored skin, they were also attracted by his handsome appearance. One of them, a blonde woman with blue eyes, pointed at Gong Jia and exclaimed to her companions in surprise. The other woman, however, smiled and said, "You look so handsome, he's so perfect for silver hair." Chapter 23:20. Unfortunately I've just not married dithing kaiful in love number. God you crazy. You know I can trust to handsomen. The conversation between the 2 women fell into Yu Yu's ears. He turned around, glanced at them, and snickered. Xiao Yichen noticed his strange expression and asked curiously, "What's wrong? Do you see the 2 women at the table over there?" Yu Yu pointed. Xiao Yichen looked in the direction he was pointing and coincidentally met the gazes of the 2 women. The 2 blonde women greeted him in a friendly manner. "Hi." "Hi." Xiao Yichen shyly retracted his head. He wasn't fluent in English and only knew the basics. However, Yu Yu was different. Just now, he had heard every single word of the conversation between the women. They were secretly talking about uncle just now. Yu Yu snickered. Gong Jia looked up and raised his eyebrows in confusion. "What's wrong? Uncle, didn't you hear them? They were talking about you just now." "Oh." Gong Jie casually flipped through the magazine on the table, but he didn't seem to care. What did they say? They thought that we were your sons. They even said that if you weren't married, they would have taken the initiative and started a romantic relationship on this island. Xiao Yichen opened his mouth in shock. Wow, so bold. Yu Yu imitated the extremely affectionate expressions of the women from just now and said, you know, I can't resist handsome men. After he finished speaking, he sized up Gong Jie's handsome face. Uncle, I didn't expect you to attract so many women. Gong Jie retorted expressionlessly, if being handsome and sexy is a sin, then I can't be forgiven. Ugh. Cough cough. Xiao Yichen made a lively expression to reflect his narcissism. Gong Jie glared at him. Isn't this the truth? Xiao Yichen said truthfully, Uncle, men should be more reserved and not be too narcissistic. Look at me, I'm so cute at such a young age. Do I talk about it as often as you do? I'm low-key, so I don't talk about it. Gong Jie was speechless. Shameless. He admitted defeat. Yu Yu glanced coldly at the two of them and his lips twitched. Shameless. Yu Yu smiled and said, Uncle, don't think I don't know that you're using Xiao Yichen and me as a shield. But that's strange. Don't you look forward to a beautiful encounter on the island? A romantic encounter in the Maldives sounds great. In the 2 days since they arrived on the island, every time they appeared in bars or crowded places with Gong Jie, they could feel the hot gazes of the blonde, blue-eyed women with hot figures shooting at Gong Jie. Chapter 23-21. This abnormal reaction had once made him doubt his uncle's sexual orientation. He remembered one time when a sexy woman had mustered the courage to approach him. Gong Jie had immediately hugged the two little lads in his arms and replied in fluent English, Sorry, I'm married. Xiao Yichen did not understand. Yu Yu, however, understood. He was using them as a shield. As they joked around, the waiter served the dishes. Just as he placed the steak and some snacks on the table, the waiter conjured a red rose out of thin air and presented it to Gong Jie as if by magic. Gong Jie raised his eyebrows in confusion. The waiter bent over like a gentleman and pointed to the seat where the blonde woman had been sitting. He replied politely, Honorable sir, this rose is a gift from the lady sitting at table 3. I hope you enjoy your meal. After he finished speaking, he left leisurely. Gong Jie, however, coldly placed the roses aside. Yu Yu said, Uncle, you're too cold. The lady appreciates you. Aren't you going to do anything? Gong Jie replied, I'm not interested in women. Xiao Yichen choked on his fruit juice. He widened his eyes in surprise as if he had seen an alien. Yu Yu glanced at the rose and then looked at Gong Jie's cold expression. He said quietly, Uncle, your reaction is very suspicious. I'm starting to wonder if you like men. Cough. This time, it was Gong Jie's turn to choke. He coughed lightly and took a napkin from the side to wipe his lips. He glared at him coldly. Your uncle's sexual orientation is very normal. But you clearly said that you're not interested in women. I don't like women with big breasts. I don't like women with big butts either. Yu Yu said, most men like women with big breasts. Oh. Is that so? Gong Jie smiled arrogantly. That's why I'm not a typical man. Yu Yu suddenly asked evilly, Oh, is it because you like Brother Hua Jin more than women? Gong Jie's face froze. He looked up with a cold gaze. Get lost. He touched a sore spot. Even now, he still felt uncomfortable when he recalled the situation that night. I saw Uncle's ears turn red when he kissed Brother Hua Jin that night. He's obviously shy. The little lad's words were full of surprises, though. Get lost. Gong Jie warned him with his gaze. If a person's gaze was truly lethal, the boy before him would have long been frozen into a popsicle. At the side, little Yichen's gossipy soul was instantly ignited. Uncle kissed Brother Hua Jin. Yeah. It's mouth to mouth. Xiao Yichen widened his eyes and exclaimed, "When did this happen? Why didn't I know about it?" Yu said, "That night, New Year's Eve. You went to bed early and we were playing cards. The loser had to be punished. After that, Gong Jia and brother Hua Jin lost, so daddy pranked them. After he said that, he didn't forget to tease Gong Jia. That night, uncle kissed brother Hua Jin a few times. Lips to lips, even your ears turned red." Gong Jia gritted his teeth. "Shut up." Yu laughed. Uncle, don't be shy. I'm very open-minded. I've never discriminated against gay people." Chapter 23-22. Gong Jia said angrily, "I'll repeat myself. I don't like men." He raised his voice slightly. Everyone in the restaurant stopped what they were doing and stopped talking. They were attracted by his angry declaration and looked over. Even the waiter at the bar looked over in a daze, and his hands paused in their movements. The air froze. Gong Jia looked around coldly with an unfriendly gaze. Everyone was intimidated by this gaze and turned their heads away awkwardly, not wanting to look any further. Yu tried to hold back her laughter and coaxed, all right. I know. I won't tease you anymore." All right. I know I was wrong. Don't be angry, uncle." Yu quickly coaxed him. After all, they were still counting on Gong Jia to make ends meet for the remaining few days on the island. If the joke went overboard, their uncle would really get angry. In a fit of anger, he would leave them on the island. It was too scary. Xiao Yichen was also a fence-sitter. He immediately stood on Gong Jia's side and accused, "Yu, don't go overboard with your joke. Uncle obviously likes women." Yu glanced at him from the corner of her eyes. Mu Yichen, you've grown up. You even know how to rebel now." After the three of them finished their lunch, Gong Jia took the two little guys for a walk by the beach. At this time, many people were lying on deck chairs by the beach, enjoying the sun. Gong Jia's naturally powerful aura, coupled with his devastatingly handsome face, became a mesmerizing sight as he walked along the beach. Under the bright sun, his skin was shockingly fair. His skin was so perfect that not a single pore could be seen. He was shockingly handsome. His delicate skin was hard to hide even though he was wearing a simple t-shirt and beach shorts. Under the sun, his silver hair was dazzling and exuded a sense of abstinence. His skin was naturally snow-white. In the past, he had tried to deliberately tan his skin. It was effective, but not obvious. Moreover, once he stopped, his skin would turn white very quickly. Gong Jia was a person who paid attention to his appearance. His original hair color was black, but his facial features were more feminine. He had a classical charm unique to the East. His eyebrows were picturesque, his lips were red, his teeth were white, his skin was smooth, his nose was high, and his eyelashes were long and thick. At first glance, his gaze was deep and melancholy, as if he had put on thick eyeliner. It could be said that his appearance, but it was not a particularly tough style. He and Yun Shishir were twins, so their facial features were very similar. Therefore, with black hair and such facial features, it was hard to avoid looking too feminine and beautiful. Fortunately, he was tall. Thus, when he was 16, he dyed his hair silver white. Once his black hair was dyed silver white, the feminine aura on his body was instantly gone. Instead, it was replaced by an extraordinary aura. Since then, he had maintained the habit of dyeing his hair. Along the way, many women came to strike up a conversation with him. Many European women were deeply infatuated with his handsome face at first sight. However, they often took the initiative to strike up a conversation, but none of them succeeded. Gong Jia always looked straight ahead and ignored them as if they were air. There was no other reason. Chapter 23-23. If it weren't for those annoying flirting, perhaps this would have been a perfect vacation. In the Maldives, the sun shone brightly, and it was like spring all year round. With such a warm climate, even if one were to lie on a deck chair and do nothing, it would still be extremely comfortable to quietly enjoy the sun. Many tall coconut trees and palm trees were planted by the sea. The stones were piled up and stacked in different styles. On the shore, the sea was crystal clear with a breathtaking light blue color. The beautiful coral reefs were clearly visible. Blue sky and white clouds, a gentle breeze. Stepping on the soft sand was extremely comfortable. The scenery was as beautiful as a painting. The reason why Gong Jia bought an island here was to make it convenient for him to come here for a vacation. Usually, there was a lot of work in the hurricane group. He was originally in charge of all the affairs in the European market. However, some time ago, after he took over half of the affairs in the African market, the pressure was overwhelming. The flames of war in Africa were incessant and frequent, and orders were increasing day by day. He flew all over the world. Every day when he woke up, he was either flying in the sky or floating on the sea. Because of the advantage of freight, orders for arms were often transported by cargo ships. Generally speaking, there were many ways to transport arms. Cargo planes, large trucks, cargo ships. However, cargo planes did not carry a lot of cargo, and the passage of cargo planes was often very cumbersome. Cargo ships could carry a lot of cargo, and there were ports all over the world. Therefore, he often sailed on the sea for many years. He still remembered one time, when he led a cargo ship through the Indian Ocean, they encountered a group of pirates and engaged in a fierce exchange of fire. This group of pirates had a lot of people. They were the pirates of the Indian Ocean. They were notorious for committing all kinds of crimes. When they encountered a cargo ship passing by, they would forcibly stop it, board the ship, rob, and indiscriminately kill the innocent. Many cargo ships encountered this group of bandits, but most of them were useless. In the end, the only result was that the captain and sailors on the ship were all killed and their bodies thrown into the sea. The cargo ship was directly hijacked by the pirates. Later, these pirates became more and more rampant, and their notoriety spread far and wide. Many cargo companies were terrified and most of them avoided this route. Gong Jia was fearless. What a joke! How could the cargo ships of those cargo companies compare to his cargo ship? The cargo ship was full of arms, and the entire cargo ship was equipped with anti-aircraft guns, rocket launchers, and torpedoes. Whoever dared to stop it was courting death. As long as the cargo ship hung the flag of the hurricane group, no pirate dared to stop it. But that time, something happened. That time, the strong wind at sea blew the flag away. The cargo ship did not hang the flag, and the cargo ship passed through the Indian Ocean. Naturally, the pirates came to cause trouble. The two sides exchanged fire. Gong Jia killed every last one of the pirates, but due to the intense exchange of gunfire, some of the cargo ship's equipment malfunctioned, so they had no choice but to stop at an island not far away. This island was an uninhabited island in the Maldives. Gong Jia thought that the scenery here was pretty good and thought that it would be nice to come here for a vacation in the future. Thus, he bought the island and developed it into this scenic island after a series of developments. The uncle and nephew trio basked in the sun comfortably. Gong Jia was wearing sunglasses as he enjoyed this rare moment of tranquility. Chapter 23-24. Under the sunlight, a necklace on Gong Jia's collarbone was extremely eye-catching. It shone with a mesmerizing light. Yu noticed the pendant. He had always seen Gong Jia wearing this pendant. It never left his body. He thought that there must be a special meaning to it. Hence, he tiptoed over to Gong Jia's recliner. Seeing that he was wearing sunglasses, he did not know if he was sleeping or awake. Hence, he secretly lifted the pendant. The round pendant seemed to be able to be opened. Yu opened it and found that the pendant was actually a mini photo frame. In the photo frame, there was a round photo. There were two pictures. One was of two children snuggling together with bright smiles on their faces. Yu recognized at a glance that the children in the photo were his mother and uncle when they were young. From the looks of it, the two children in the photo were about 7 years old. However, Gong Jia was not as tall as he was now. He was even shorter than Yun Shishir when he was young. Yun Shishir hugged the 7-year-old Gong Jia and made a V sign. Her lips were red and her teeth were white. She was smiling brightly. Gong Jia, on the other hand, seemed a little shy. He leaned his head on Yun Shishir's shoulder and looked at the camera. His smile was a little shy and reserved, but his eyes were clear and bright. His black hair was soft and beautiful, falling obediently to his temples. Under his bangs, his eyebrows were gentle, and he looked like an obedient little lamb. He was wearing a snow-white shirt and a small bow tie. He looked elegant and cute. One of his small hands was hugging Yun Shishir's waist, while the other hand made a V sign. However, he did not know if it was because he was shy or for some other reason. His 2 fingers were slightly curled up, and he looked shy. Yu muttered in his heart, "Uncle was clearly very cute when he was young. He even looked a little like me." The miraculous thing about genes. But after he grew up, how did he grow up to be a little devil? He was black-bellied, unruly, and insufferably arrogant. In his mind, a little Gong Jia and the Devil King were standing together. One was as cute and innocent as a lamb, while the other had his hands in his pockets, wore a pair of sunglasses, and had a head full of silver hair. He looked sharp and imposing. He was like a completely different person. Yu looked at the other photo. In the photo, a young woman was sitting by a flower bed, twirling a Chinese rose in her hand. She had a gentle smile on her face. She had a face that was very similar to Yun Shishir's. She was gentle and beautiful, and her eyes were like a painting. Especially her pair of black eyebrows, they were like the clouds in the distant mountains, and her eyes were like water. Her straight black hair, without any adornment, was just like a waterfall, slanting from her shoulders and gently sticking to her back. Occasionally, a few strands would fall to her temples, but it made her look even more charming and moving. Yu sighed again. Genes were such a wonderful thing. He recognized her at a glance. This woman was probably his mommy's mommy, his grandmother. He could tell. His grandmother and his mommy were both very fond of Chinese roses. Perhaps it was also because his grandmother liked Chinese roses that his mommy had been meticulously raising a patch of Chinese roses in the back garden. Xiao Yichen leaned over and took a look. His eyes widened in surprise. Is this grandma when she was young? Yes. Yu nodded, his gaze warm. Xiao Yichen said, Grandma was also a great beauty when she was young. Nonsense. Yu flicked his forehead. Otherwise, how could mommy be so beautiful? Chapter 23-25. It was no wonder Uncle always carried this pendant with him. He must have missed Grandma a lot, right? Xiao Yichen glanced at the photo of Gong Jia and Yun Shishir standing together. Looking at how shy Gong Jia was as he snuggled up in Yun Shishir's arms, he suddenly said in disdain, I didn't expect Uncle to be a little kid when he was young. It's hard to imagine how short and small he was. What did Uncle eat to be so tall? Yu also said bitterly, I want to know too. I feel like Uncle was shorter than me when he was young. Xiao Yichen said, but Uncle is about the same height as Daddy now. Daddy is 189 centimeters. Gong Jia heard their discussion and opened his eyes. He took off his sunglasses and glared at them unhappily. Who said I was a little kid? I was tall when I was young. Some boys were older than me by a few years, but they weren't as tall as me. Yu raised the pendant in front of his eyes and pointed at the little kid snuggling up in Yun Shishir's arms. No matter how tall he wasn't as tall as Mommy. Gong Jia saw him pointing at the photo and glanced at it. His face suddenly turned red and he coughed awkwardly. He was inexplicably shy. Yu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Uncle, why are you so shy for no reason? Xiao Yichen added, because he got slapped in the face for bragging. He kept saying that he was tall when he was young, but in the photo, he was clearly much shorter than Mommy. Gong Jia muttered, that short one isn't me. Yu said, huh? Xiao Yichen was also shocked and stared blankly. He said noisily, "If it wasn't you, then who was it? Could it be mommy?" Gong Jie's expression was a little strange. He looked away awkwardly and said helplessly, "Yeah, the one with short hair is your mommy." Yu and Xiao Yichen heard this and their little mouths formed an O shape. Disbelief was written all over their faces. Yu said in a daze, "Then, the one with the pigtails is you?" Xiao Yichen said in disbelief. Gong Jia closed his eyes and admitted reluctantly, "Yeah. It's me." 0 dash. Lying next to his uncle, Yu curiously imagined the scene. In her mind, little Gong Jia secretly took out a dress from Yun Shishir's wardrobe and put it on. He compared it in front of the mirror, then climbed onto his grandmother's dressing table and clumsily smeared lipstick on his mouth. Goosebumps rose all over Yu's body. Pervert. No wonder. No wonder he wasn't interested in women. Yu was speechless. So uncle was a transvestite when he was young. Xiao Yichen stabbed him again. Pervert. Gong Jia said innocently, "Humph. How is that possible? I've never liked to wear dresses, but, at that time, I had no choice." In the photo, the kid with the pigtails and the bright smile was Gong Jie. This photo was taken when he and Yun Shishir were 7 years old. At that time, Yun Shishir had always dressed him up as a girl. It wasn't a bad taste. Speaking of which, it brought back a bitter but happy memory. At that time, Mu Qingqing left the Mu family pregnant and only had a small amount of cash on her. Chapter 23-26. Her work was tough, and she had to leave early and return late at night. Once, she was so exhausted that she almost had a miscarriage. She gritted her teeth and had to take several injections to prevent miscarriage. Only then did she manage to keep her 2 children. From then on, she did not dare to work too hard. Seeing that she was pitiful, the hair salon's boss reduced the intensity of his work. Perhaps, he was interested in her. After all, a young and beautiful woman, who was alone, could not resist a man's lust even though she was pregnant. A few months later, Mu Qingqing gave birth to twins. In the ward, the hair salon's boss diligently served her tea and water. Later, he even held her hand and confessed to her that he wanted to marry her as his concubine. Of course, Mu Qingqing wouldn't agree. Hence, the hair salon's boss had a rush of blood and went home to divorce his wife. In the end, while she was still in confinement, the hair salon's lady boss came to her rented house and broke everything in it. She hardened her heart and left that small county with her 2 children, who were not even a month old. It was hard to imagine how tough life must be for a widow and an orphan. As she did not do a good job during her confinement, her health deteriorated rapidly. She was short of money after giving birth, so she went to work at a nightclub. With her sweet singing, she was able to feed herself. However, she was inevitably disturbed by all kinds of men when she was in a place of debauchery. There were CEOs and ordinary salarymen. Most of them were nouveau riche who had been demolished. This was nothing much, though. In those few years, Mu Xing had never given up on searching for her. In order to avoid the Mu family's eyes, she had moved from city to city. If she were to count, the number of times she had moved was no less than the number of times she had moved with both hands. For as long as he could remember, Gong Jie's deepest memory of his childhood was the life of a vagrant. Often, not long after settling down in one city, he would move to another as if he were fleeing from a disaster. His impression of his home was too vague. He vaguely remembered one time when he and Yun Shishir were woken up in the middle of the night. Mu Qingqing carried them in her arms without a care for anything else. She left everything behind and hurriedly left with only her documents and the little cash she had. At that time, they had only moved to this city for 3 months. Because they had just moved, other than a bed, there were a lot of small appliances and daily necessities in the rented apartment, which was a temporary addition. Naturally, they were not new. Mu Qingqing had brought them to the second-hand market to get them. The table lamp's current was unstable and would flicker from time to time. The black and white TV with a big belly, if one did not tap on the back. At that time, Mu Qingqing lived frugally. She bought fresh vegetables from the market in the morning and gave them to the children. She, on the other hand, would go to the market in the evening. When it was about to close, she would buy the stale vegetables that the vendors didn't want. She would come back and copy them. Then, she would eat with relish what the children ate in the morning. In 3 years, Mu Qingqing had lost a lot of weight. And that night, he didn't know what had happened. As if being hunted down, Mu Qingqing carried them, abandoned everything in the rented house, boarded a long-distance bus overnight, and left in a hurry. Chapter 23-27. That was what he and a few of his close friends had saved up after selling mineral water bottles, discarded cardboard boxes, and advertising paper. He had always wanted to buy a pair of beautiful high heels for his mother when he had enough money. At that time, a pair of high heels cost 30 yuan. He had saved more than 5 yuan. At that time, this was probably all he had. The young Yun Shishir, on the other hand, could only helplessly hug him with teary eyes. The books, pencils, and pretty dresses her mother had bought for her. Even though they were bought cheaply from the market, they still looked beautiful on her. Shao Jia circled around her and exclaimed, "Sister is like a fairy." Like a fairy. However, they had left in such a hurry that the clothes were left behind in the rented house. "Mommy, why did we run away?" the young Gong Jia asked, perplexed. Mu Qingqing only said, "Because, that person came looking for us." "Is he a bad guy?" "Yes. He's a big bad guy." "What about Daddy?" The Gong Jia cautiously mentioned this title. "When exactly will Daddy come looking for us?" As soon as he finished speaking, he saw that her eyes were sparkling and tears were flowing down her cheeks. Frightened, he quickly wiped them away with his small hands. From then on, he did not dare to mention this heart-wrenching name again. After that, Mu Qingqing brought them to a very remote village to settle down. It was a remote place more than 1,000 kilometers away from the capital. Because it was a rural area, the development was backward, and even the telephone was not popularized. There was only a public telephone in a small shop, and it cost 10 cents to make a call. This village was called Lihua Village, and they farmed for a living. Every family had dozens of acres of farmland. The villagers were mostly simple and honest. Most of them were self-sufficient. If they did not have enough, they would ride a tricycle to a faraway town to buy some. Mu Xing never found this place again. The village chief saw how pitiful Mu Qingqing was. She was a widow and an orphan. His heart ached for her, so he rented his backyard to them at a very low rent. It was 100 yuan a month. Mu Qingqing was overjoyed. Because behind the backyard, there was a large piece of land. She had always dreamed of having her own backyard. Later, she made a small garden here, surrounded by railings, and planted a large number of Chinese roses. At that time, she still had a few thousand yuan from working in the nightclub. After settling down in Pear Blossom Village, the days passed peacefully and there were no more disturbances. Mu Qingqing used to work in a hair salon and learned a lot of skills. After she settled down, she separated a large part of the rental house and made a small hair salon. At that time, when the village women saw such a beautiful and fashionable woman coming to the village, they followed suit and came to her to have their hair cut. At that time, the hair salon was a novelty in the village, and she was the only one. Men and women, old and young, all patronized her business. Sometimes, a haircut would cost 3 yuan, a bag of rice, or a barrel of grain and oil. As for the rice and oil, she would keep them for herself. She would ride her tricycle to the town's market to sell the excess. When business was good, he could earn a few hundred yuan a month. Their days gradually improved. Of course, this was all in the future. When they first settled down, there was nothing. Chapter 23-28. Coincidentally, the village chief also had 2 daughters and a son. He doted on her and often sent her some clothes. They were the children's leftovers, but they were definitely not tattered. However, the funny thing was that the elder of the two daughters was already 12 years old and the younger was 9 years old, but the son was only 5 or 6 years old. Therefore, the gong jia could not fit into the boys' clothes, and Yun Shishir could fit into them. As for the girls' clothes, Yun Shishir found them too big because the sleeves were too long, but they fit the gong jia perfectly. Mu Qingqing also found it interesting, so she simply let Yun Shishir wear the boys' clothes and let the gong jia wear the girls' dress. Therefore, she cut Yun Shishir's hair short and tied 2 cute braids for the gong jia. Once, there was a rich family in the village whose son went to university and wanted to study abroad. In order to reward his son's academic achievements, he bought a camera and a pager. At that time, cameras were still a novelty in the village. The village chief said that he wanted to take a few photos of the 3 of them. There was one of the 3 of them standing together, and a few of them were taken separately. However, a few of the photos were later lost, and only these 2 were left. Little Gong Jia had been keeping it in his pocket all this time, so it was perfectly preserved. After returning to the Gong family, in order to commemorate his mother, he reduced the size of these 2 photos and embedded them in a pendant, which he always wore. This was probably the last thing he remembered about his mother. The Gong Jia came back to his senses from his memories and smiled sadly. At that time, we were poor, so we wore the leftovers of other children. The girls' clothes were on the bigger side. I was tall, so only I could wear them. So. Oh, you said. Uncle, I've wronged you. I thought you were a transvestite. I'm not that perverted, the Gong Jia said. Xiao Yichen agreed. That's right. Yu is the big pervert. Yu was depressed for a moment. Mu Yichen, do you have a stand? Xiao Yichen chuckled. Gong Jia raised his eyebrows as his gaze fell on the photo in the pendant. His lips suddenly curved into a gentle arc as his fingertips gently touched the smooth surface of the photo. He looked at Mu Qingqing in the photo with a longing gaze. His phone suddenly rang. Gong Jia came back to his senses. He picked up the phone and answered the call. Hello? Little Jia. Yun Shishir's panicked voice came from the other end. Gong Jia suddenly sat up from the recliner. Because of her anxious tone, he became a little nervous. Sis, what's wrong? What happened? Where are you? I'm at a resort. I have to return home immediately. What about you? Are you coming back with me, or? What happened? Gong Jia was a little uneasy. Yun Shishir was silent for a moment. Her breathing was slightly hurried. Something happened to my dad. He's in the hospital now. We have to rush back immediately. What? Yu and Xiao Yichen looked at Gong Jia's unpredictable expression and looked at each other in confusion. After he put down the phone, the 2 little guys fought to be the first to ask, what happened? Was it mommy on the phone? Gong Jia nodded and looked at them. Something happened to your grandpa. He's in the hospital now. We have to return home immediately. The 2 little munchkins were shocked. Something happened? He was in the hospital. What happened that was so serious? Chapter 23-29. Yun Shishir and Mu Yaja were taking a stroll on the beach when a hasty overseas call came in, causing her to break out in a cold sweat. Shishir, I'm your aunt. Where are you now? Yun Shishir instinctively wanted to hang up the call when she heard that it was from her aunt. She no longer had a good impression of this woman, so her reply was unavoidably cold. I'm on vacation overseas. Her aunt did not seem to mind her cold tone and sounded very anxious. It's like this, I'm calling you because your father is in the hospital. Can you rush back to the country immediately? Your uncle and I have pooled together a sum of money for the medical fees, but we really can't afford it. The hospital has been urging us, so, can you come back immediately? Yun Shishir was shocked. Hospital? Is he sick? No, her aunt seemed to have received quite a shock as well. Her voice was trembling with fear. I only found out about this after receiving a call from your uncle. As your uncle's legs are inconvenient, Qingmiao and I rushed over to send your father to the hospital. He, she laughed and even emphasized that they were the ones who sent Yun Yeqing to the hospital. Yun Shishir panicked. What exactly happened to my father? Tell me clearly. Shishir, don't panic. It's like this, your father was splashed with concentrated sulfuric acid on his way home from a night shift. He's still in the emergency room right now. I heard from the doctor that your father has many burns on his body. It seems that he was splashed with sulfuric acid head-on, especially on his face. His life is still in danger. Yun Shishir's breathing suddenly quickened. Sulfuric acid? And concentrated sulfuric acid at that? Who was it that was so ruthless? Her father was usually kind and never made enemies, so he did not offend anyone. Who on earth was so deranged to do such a vicious thing? Mu Yaja knew how serious this matter was. Without another word, he booked the earliest flight. After meeting up with Gong Jia, the five of them boarded the flight back to the country. As there were no direct flights to Beijing, they flew from the Maldives to Sea City and then back to Beijing. It was already 7:30 p.m. when they arrived in Beijing. It was rush hour now, so they wasted a lot of time on the way to the hospital by taxi. By the time they reached the hospital, Yun Yeqing was still in the operating theater. Yun Shishir did not care about Gong Jia and Mu Yaja behind her. She squeezed into the elevator and went up to the floor where the operating theater was located. When she rushed over, she saw Xiang Yu guarding outside the operating room while Yun Yeho was slumped on the side with a gloomy look on his face. Uncle. Shishir. When Yun Yeho saw Yun Shishir rushing back, he felt as if he had seen his savior and felt dizzy all of a sudden. Yun Shishir rushed over and glanced at the light above the operating theater. Operation in progress, she said in a daze. Dad hasn't come out of the operating theater yet? Just as Yun Yeho was about to speak, Xiang Yu came up to him with tears streaming down her face. Shishir, you're finally here. Your father is still in danger. The doctor has only come out twice and told us to be mentally prepared. He could die at any time. Yun Shishir's face changed drastically when she heard that. Chapter 23:30. Xiang Yu wanted to say something but hesitated when she heard that. Under her father's glare, she shrank to the side in grievance and kept quiet. Behind them, Mu Yaja and Gong Jia arrived with the two little lads. He walked over with a solemn expression. Seeing Yun Shishir's desolate expression, he was about to ask her something when the door to the operating theater suddenly opened. The doctor walked out and, upon seeing so many people, immediately asked, "Are all of you the victim's family members?" "Yes. I am." Yun Shishir went up to him anxiously. "I'm his daughter. How's my father now?" The doctor said tiredly, "It's hard to say. He's still in the emergency room. Go and settle the medical bills first before we can proceed with the surgery." Yun Shishir nodded. "Okay." Mu Yaja immediately said, "I'll go and settle the medical bills." "Okay. Okay." Yun Shishir nodded again, but her eyes had become hollow. Gong Jia could not help feeling sorry for her when he saw her in a daze. He walked over and put his arm around her shoulders to comfort her. "Sis, don't worry. It's especially at times like this that you need to be calm to deal with the next problem." "Okay." Yun Shishir nodded solemnly. She had to calm down. Yun Yeho said, "Your father is still in the emergency room and is still in critical condition. What's more important now is for us to stay calm. If we lose our composure, your father will have no one to rely on." Yun Shishir was heartbroken. What exactly happened? Why did they say that he was splashed with sulfuric acid for no reason? Who did this? Who did this? Yun Yeho let out a long sigh and shook his head. "I don't know, either. I don't know which D*MNB* star did this either. Splashing someone with sulfuric acid is too cruel. Too cruel. This incident happened last night. Last night, Yun Yeqing was working the midday shift and only got off work at 10 p.m. As usual, Yun Yeho was waiting for him at home. However, last night, until past midnight, there was still no sign of him. He called several times in a row, but no one answered. After waiting for a long time, Yun Yeho could no longer sit still, so he pushed himself out of the house in his wheelchair. As soon as he stepped out of the door, he heard a commotion not far away. He curiously rushed over, only to find a group of people surrounding a person lying on the ground. They were shaking their heads, sighing, and calling the police. It was so crowded that not even a drop of water could trickle through. Yun Yeho was not in the mood to meddle in other people's business, but he heard someone exclaim in surprise, "Isn't this the family from room 203? I've seen him a few times. His surname is Yun, what's his name again?" His heart skipped a beat when he heard that. He immediately squeezed through the crowd and found the unconscious man lying face down in a pool of blood. No one dared to touch him. Some people said that the small bubbles around him were concentrated sulfuric acid. If they touched it, they would get burned. They had to wait for the police and ambulance to arrive. Yun Yeho's face turned as white as a sheet upon hearing that. Concentrated sulfuric acid? Trembling with fear, he took another look at the pool of blood on the ground and almost fainted from fright. Immediately, he cried for help in a panic. "This is my brother. This is my brother. Help! Quick, save him." Chapter 23:31. Yun Yeho, on the other hand, was so anxious that tears rolled down his cheeks. As he was lying on the ground, no one dared to touch him. No one knew whether he was dead or alive, so he could only sit in a wheelchair and worry helplessly. In the end, when the police arrived, the hospital informed them that the ambulance had met with an accident on the way. When it rains, it pours. Yun Yeho made a call to his wife, who rushed over with Qing Miao in tow. She arranged for her men to send him to a nearby first aid station. By the time the ambulance finally arrived, he was already on the brink of death. Yun Yeho glanced at Yun Yecheng. His face was badly mangled and unrecognizable due to the large area of burns. He was so frightened that he fainted once. By the time he woke up, his mother had accompanied him to the hospital. After 2 resuscitation attempts, they issued 3 notices of critical illness. Yun Yeho was both mentally and physically exhausted from staying up the whole night in fear. His mother was not exaggerating either. Every time the doctor came out of the operating room, he had to be mentally prepared for the aftermath. A person could die at any time. 50% of the burn area in the province was mainly on the face, neck, and shoulders. His condition was still very unstable, and his life was not out of danger yet. The most serious injury was not the disfigurement but the burns on Yun Yecheng's face. Due to the inhalation of sulfuric acid, the poison had entered his blood. After all, the burned area was close to the trachea, so the chemical fumes from the burns could cause lung damage. Even though the tracheotomy had been done, he was still on a ventilator. Furthermore, his liver and kidney functions were damaged. His condition was not good. After entering the infection stage, it was all up to fate. The sulfuric acid had probably entered his mouth, but no one knew if it had burned his throat. The scary thing was that even if he managed to survive, he would still be in great pain for the rest of his life. Who did this? Yun Shishir stared at the operating lights with a cold expression. Who did this? Has the culprit been caught? Has he been arrested? Yun Yeho shook his head in despair and choked out, "And no, if this happened in the neighborhood, we should be able to catch the culprit through the surveillance cameras, right?" Yun Shishir asked agitatedly, "Dad doesn't have any enemies. Who could do such a cruel thing?" When I found him, he was already like this. Until now, there has been no news from the police station. It was said that the police brought back a few people who were at the scene to record their statements, but when they called to ask, they did not get any results. The people who were there said that when they found your father, he was already lying on the ground. There was no one else around. Gong Jie frowned. Yu Yu and Xiao Yichen looked gloomy and worried that Yun Yecheng would not make it through this critical period. Xiang Yu whispered, the criminal must have escaped. This is intentional harm. How could someone who did such a thing stay at the scene? He must have fled long ago. Yun Shusher gritted her teeth and clenched her fists in anger. Damn it! Damn it! She squatted helplessly on the ground. Her heart was burning with anxiety, but she wanted to cry but had no tears. Shusher, don't worry. Let's wait for the doctor to come out first. Now, we can only wait and see the result. Chapter 23:32. Xiang Yu comforted her in the same way. Yun Shusher remained expressionless and did not react. At this moment, she could not hear any words of comfort as her mind was completely blank. Mu Yaja paid the medical bills. When he returned, he saw Yun Shusher sitting on the long bench with a forlorn expression. Her face was dull and lifeless. Gong Jia was beside her, holding her hand tightly and hugging her shoulders. Mu Yaja walked over and sat down beside her. When Gong Jia saw him, he said, "Brother-in-law, stay with her. I'll send you and Xiao Chen home." Okay. Yu suddenly said, "I want to stay with mommy and wait for grandpa to come out of the operating theater." Xiao Chen added, me too. I don't want to go home. I want to be with mommy." Xiao Chen did not have any feelings for Yun Yecheng, but when he saw his mommy in pain, he felt sorry for her and could not bear to leave. Mu Yaja said, "Then, you two sit here and be good." Okay. Time passed by slowly, second by second. Yun Shusher had never felt time pass so slowly before. Every hour felt like a century of torment. At dawn, the door to the operating theater finally opened. When Yun Shusher heard the door opening, she jumped up from the long bench and went up to the doctor worriedly. "Doctor. How is it? Is my dad okay?" The doctor removed his mask and sighed. "His life is not in danger for now, but he hasn't passed the critical stage yet. He needs to be transferred to the intensive care unit for observation. His life could be in danger at any time." Yun Shusher opened her mouth and held her breath. She mumbled, "Is it that serious? I'm already very optimistic about the outcome." The doctor shook his head. "The burns are too serious. Because of the concentrated sulfuric acid, his face has been burned beyond recognition. His eyelids are gone, both sides of his nose are missing, his facial features are severely deformed, and his internal organs are damaged. We have already done our best to save him." Yun Shusher was stunned for a long time. She bit her lips hard and endured the pain in her heart. "Thank you, doctor." The surgery was open. A group of medical staff pushed the ward towards the elevator. A group of people rushed to the intensive care unit and saw a few nurses and doctors busying themselves. They could only stand outside the door and watch, not allowed to enter. Yun Shusher finally got a good look at Yun Yecheng's current state. Her eyes widened in shock as her breathing quickened. The man was lying on the bed. His face was charred black, and he was wearing a breathing tube. He was completely lifeless. Tubes were inserted all over his body. Occasionally, one could see his exposed skin covered with white ointment. One could imagine how tragic his appearance would be before the ointment was applied. Yun Shusher did not dare to think too deeply about the mangled state of his body. When Xiang Yu arrived with Yun Yeho in a wheelchair, the latter could not stop his tears from falling when he saw his father's unrecognizable appearance in the ward. "God bless him. He's still alive. God bless him." Xiang Yu comforted him. "Don't worry, Yeho. God blesses good people. He'll be fine." Finally, he said something reasonable. Although it sounded a little pretentious. Yun Yeho only glanced at her and did not say a word. Gong Jia said, "Sis, you go back and rest first. I'll stay and look after him." Yun Shusher stubbornly shook her head. "No, I want to stay and look after him."